His heart stopped when the elevator jerked to a halt. The lights flickered, then dimmed to an eerie emergency glow. The small space suddenly felt like it was closing in on him, but that wasn't what made Elijah Williams, CEO of Williams Tech Enterprises, break into a cold sweat. It was the woman standing next to him, the woman he'd been watching from afar for months, the woman whose smile made his knees weak, the woman who had no idea that the richest man in the building could barely form a complete sentence around her. And now they were trapped together with no way out, 30 floors above the ground in a metal box that seemed to be getting smaller by the second. "This can't be happening," Elijah muttered, more to himself than to her. He pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling slightly. No signal. Of course there wasn't. The universe had decided today was the perfect day to test his social anxiety to the absolute limit. "I think we're stuck," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. Zara Bennett was the new head of marketing at Williams Tech, hired 6 months ago. She was brilliant, confident, and had already increased their market reach by 20%. She was also the most beautiful woman Elijah had ever seen, with deep brown eyes that seemed to look right through him, smooth dark skin that glowed under any light, and a smile that had the power to make him forget his own name. Yes, he managed, mentally kicking himself for not being able to say something more intelligent. He was Elijah Williams, for crying out loud. He ran board meetings with some of the most intimidating executives in the tech world. He made billion-dollar decisions before breakfast. And yet here he was, reduced to single-syllable responses because Zara Bennett was standing 3 feet away from him. "Should we call for help?" she asked, pressing the emergency button. The alarm sounded, but nothing else happened. "I have the maintenance manager's number," Elijah said, fumbling with his phone again. But no signal. Zara checked her own phone and sighed. "Same here. Dead zone." They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Elijah glanced at his watch. It was already 7:30 p.m. The office had been nearly empty when they got on the elevator, him coming back from a late meeting, her working late as usual. It might be hours before anyone realized they were stuck. "Well," Zara said, slipping off her high heels and sitting down on the elevator floor, smoothing her pencil skirt over her knees, "looks like we're going to be here for a while, Mr. Williams." "Please," he said, his throat dry, "call me Elijah." She smiled up at him, and his heart did that strange little flip it always did when she looked his way. "Only if you sit down and stop hovering like you're about to give a boardroom presentation. We could be here all night." All night. Trapped in an elevator with Zara Bennett. The thought sent a wave of panic through him. Not because he didn't want to be near her, the opposite was true. He was terrified of making a fool of himself, of her discovering that the man whose name was on the building, the man Forbes had called the tech world's most eligible bachelor, was actually a socially awkward mess who couldn't hold a normal conversation with a woman he was attracted to. Reluctantly, Elijah loosened his tie and sat down across from her, keeping as much distance as the small elevator would allow. He noticed a small bead of sweat forming on her forehead, and it occurred to him that perhaps she wasn't as calm as she appeared. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Are you claustrophobic?" Zara took a deep breath. "A little. But I'll be fine as long as I don't think about the fact that we're suspended in a tiny box hundreds of feet above the ground with no way out." Without thinking, Elijah moved closer and took her hand. "We're going to be fine. These elevators have multiple safety features. And someone will notice we're missing eventually." She looked down at their joined hands, then up at his face. It was the closest they'd ever been, and Elijah could smell her perfume, something subtle and floral that made his head spin. "You know," she said with a small smile, "this is the longest conversation we've ever had." Elijah felt heat rise to his face. "I know. I'm sorry about that." "What? You're the CEO. You're busy." "That's not it," he said, surprised by his own honesty. Maybe it was the strange intimacy of their situation, or maybe he was just tired of hiding. "I'm not good at talking to people. Especially people I admire." Zara raised an eyebrow. "You admire me?" "Of course I do. Your marketing strategy for the Williams tab was brilliant. You've revolutionized our approach to social media. The board can't stop singing your praises." She laughed, and the sound echoed in the small space. "Well, thank you. But I meant more like, socially. You always seem to duck out when I enter a room." Elijah's heart pounded. Was he that obvious? "I didn't think you noticed me." Now it was Zara's turn to look surprised. "Not notice you? You're Elijah Williams. Everyone notices you." "They notice the CEO," he corrected. "The name. The bank account. Not me." Their eyes met in the dim emergency lighting, and for a moment, Elijah forgot they were stuck in an elevator. He forgot about his social anxiety and his awkwardness and the mountain of work waiting for him. All he could see was Zara, looking at him with something he couldn't quite identify in her eyes. The elevator jerked suddenly, making them both jump. The lights flickered again and Zara's hand tightened around his. "What was that?" she asked, her voice tense. Before Elijah could answer, the elevator dropped. It was only a few inches, but it felt like miles. Zara let out a small cry and threw her arms around him. Instinctively, he pulled her close, one hand on her back, the other still holding hers. "It's okay," he whispered, though his own heart was racing. "The safety lock's engaged. We're not going to fall." She nodded against his chest but didn't pull away. And despite the fear and the uncertainty, Elijah couldn't help but notice how perfectly she fit in his arms, how right it felt to hold her. They stayed like that, clinging to each other in the dimly lit elevator, both pretending it was just about fear and not the electric current that seemed to run between them. What neither of them knew was that this unexpected encounter was just the beginning, that being trapped together would unlock feelings they'd both been hiding, start a chain of events that would change their lives, and lead to a love story neither of them saw coming. As the initial shock of being trapped wore off, Elijah and Zara settled into an uneasy coexistence in the small elevator. They had moved apart after that brief, intense moment when the elevator had dropped, both pretending that the racing of their hearts was solely due to fear. "So," Zara said, breaking the silence, "how long do you think we'll be stuck here?" Elijah checked his watch again. "Hard to say. Security does rounds every couple of hours. If they notice the elevator isn't working, they'll call maintenance. And if they don't notice? Then we might be here until morning when people start coming in for work." Zara groaned. "Great. I have a presentation tomorrow morning that I haven't finished preparing for." "The Johnson account?" Elijah asked. She looked at him, surprised. "Yes. How did you know?" Elijah shrugged, trying to appear casual. "I read all the department briefs. Your strategy outline was impressive." The truth was, he read her reports more carefully than anyone else's. He'd spent hours going over her proposals, not because he didn't trust her work, it was always flawless, but because it was the only way he could connect with her without having to actually talk to her. "Well, thank you," Zara said, seeming genuinely pleased. "But if I don't finish the slides tonight, impressive strategy or not, I'm going to look like an idiot tomorrow." "I doubt that's possible," Elijah said before he could stop himself. In the dim light, he thought he saw her blush. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and looked away. "You'd be surprised. I'm not always as put together as I seem at the office." "Neither am I," he admitted. Zara laughed. "Please. You're like the definition of having it all together. Youngest CEO on the Fortune 500 list, built your company from nothing, never seen without a perfect suit." She gestured at him. "Even trapped in an elevator, you look like you just stepped out of a business magazine photo shoot." Now it was Elijah's turn to blush. "That's just practice. And good tailoring." "And what about the rest? The business genius part?" Elijah loosened his tie further, suddenly feeling the need to be honest. "Would you believe I'm terrified most of the time? Every decision, every meeting. I'm always afraid I'm one wrong move away from losing everything I've built." Zara studied him, her eyes thoughtful. "I wouldn't have guessed that. You always seem so confident." "Like I said, practice." He gave a small smile. "What about you? You walked into Williams Tech like you owned the place. Half the executive team was intimidated by you from day one." Zara laughed again, the sound bright in the confined space. "Now that was definitely an act. I was so nervous on my first day that I threw up in the bathroom before my welcome meeting." "You did not." "I absolutely did. Ask Tina from HR. She held my hair back." They both laughed, and Elijah felt something shift between them. The awkwardness was melting away, replaced by something more comfortable, more real. "So if we're going to be stuck here for hours," Zara said, "we might as well get to know each other. Tell me something about Elijah Williams that isn't in your company bio." Elijah thought for a moment. "I hate fish. Can't stand the smell, the taste, any of it. Which makes fancy business dinners really awkward sometimes." Zara grinned. "I'll remember that for the next marketing dinner. Your turn to ask." "Okay," Elijah said, feeling more at ease than he could ever remember feeling with someone he was attracted to. "What's something you love that would surprise people?" "Comic books," Zara answered without hesitation. "I have an entire bookshelf filled with them at home. Mostly X-Men and Black Panther." "No way," Elijah said, genuinely surprised. "Me too." "Well, I'm more of a Batman guy, but still." "Batman? Really? Such a CEO choice," she teased. "What's that supposed to mean?" Rich guy who thinks he can save the world with his money and tech? Sound familiar? Elijah laughed. When you put it that way, it does sound a bit on the nose. They continued this way, trading questions and answers, discovering shared interests and amusing differences. Elijah learned that Zara had grown up in a small town, the daughter of a teacher and a nurse, and had worked her way through college on scholarships and part-time jobs. She learned that despite his wealth, Elijah still drove the same car he'd had in college, a beat-up Honda that he refused to get rid of. It was the first thing I ever bought with my own money, he explained. From my first internship paycheck. I know it's silly to be sentimental about a car, but... It's not silly, Zara said softly. I think it's nice. Keeps you grounded. As they talked, the space between them gradually decreased. They were now sitting side by side, their shoulders almost touching, their voices getting softer as the conversation grew more personal. Can I ask you something? Zara said, her tone changing slightly. Anything, Elijah replied, surprising himself with how much he meant it. Why did you really hire me? My interview was a disaster. I spilled coffee all over my portfolio, and I was sure I'd blown it. Elijah remembered that day clearly. Zara had been wearing a red dress, and when she'd knocked over her coffee cup, she hadn't panicked or apologized profusely like most would have. Instead, she'd calmly used her own scarf to mop up the mess, made a joke about how that particular campaign needed a redesign anyway, and continued her presentation without missing a beat. You were the most qualified candidate by far, he said. And you handled the coffee incident with such grace. It showed me you could deal with unexpected problems without falling apart. That's rare. Oh, Zara said, sounding genuinely moved. I thought maybe someone had put in a good word for me or something. Nope. You earned it. They fell silent again, but it was a comfortable silence now. Elijah was amazed at how quickly his anxiety around her had faded. Maybe being forced into this situation was exactly what he'd needed. The elevator jerked again, making them both stiffen. The lights flickered more dramatically this time, and for a second they were in complete darkness. Zara's hand found his and he held it tight. When the emergency lights came back on, their faces were inches apart. Elijah could feel Zara's breath on his cheek, could see every detail of her face, the tiny freckle near her right eye, the slight upturn of her nose, the fullness of her lips. For one wild moment he thought about kissing her. The urge was so strong that he actually leaned forward slightly. But then reality crashed back in. He was her boss. They were trapped in an elevator. This wasn't the time or place. He pulled back, clearing his throat. Sorry. Zara's expression was unreadable. For what? Nothing. Nothing. She held his gaze for a moment longer, then slowly pulled her hand away from his. We should probably try to conserve our phone batteries. In case we get a signal. Right? Elijah agreed, feeling like he'd missed a moment, a chance. But maybe it was for the best. The last thing he wanted was for Zara to think he was taking advantage of the situation. As they settled in for what was looking to be a long night, Elijah couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if he'd been brave enough to close that small distance between them. And he had no idea that Zara was wondering the exact same thing. 2 hours into their unplanned confinement, Elijah and Zara had exhausted most of the usual small talk topics. They discussed their favorite movies, hers, The Princess Bride, his, Anything by Christopher Nolan, their dream vacations. She wanted to see Japan, he longed to visit South Africa, and their most embarrassing work moments, stories they both swore would never leave the elevator. The emergency lights had dimmed further to conserve power, casting the small space in a soft, almost intimate glow. They had both removed their suit jackets, and Elijah had rolled up his sleeves, revealing strong forearms that Zara found herself glancing at more often than she'd like to admit. We should probably try to save our phone batteries, Elijah suggested, checking his device one more time for a signal before turning it off. Just in case. Zara nodded, doing the same with her phone. So what now? 20 questions? Truth or dare? Though I guess dare options are limited in here. Elijah smiled. How about just truth then? No questions off limits. Dangerous game to play with your employee, Mr. CO, Zara said, but her tone was teasing. I think we're past formalities at this point, don't you? Fair enough, she agreed. You start. Elijah thought for a moment. Why marketing? You're obviously smart enough to do anything. Why choose this field? Zara leaned back against the elevator wall. My dad always said I could sell ice to penguins. I was that kid with the lemonade stand who had the whole neighborhood lined up. But honestly, I love the psychology of it, understanding what makes people connect with a product or a message. It's like solving a puzzle about human behavior. Elijah nodded, genuinely interested. You're good at it. The Williams tab campaign was brilliant. Thanks, she said. My turn. Why are you so shy around me when you're so confident with everyone else? The question caught him off guard. He'd hoped his awkwardness around her wasn't quite so obvious. Not shy. Zara gave him a look. Truth, remember? No lying allowed. Elijah sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. Fine. I'm shy around you because I find you intimidating. Me? Intimidating you? Zara laughed in disbelief. That's ridiculous. Not ridiculous, he insisted. You're brilliant, confident, beautiful. He trailed off, realizing what he'd just said. I mean, I just respect you a lot professionally. Zara said, clearly not buying it. Professional respect makes the great Elijah Williams stammer and forget his words in meetings? You've noticed that? Everyone's noticed that. There's an office pool about whether you have some kind of speech impediment that only flares up when I'm in the room. Elijah groaned, covering his face with his hands. That's mortifying. It's kind of cute, actually, Zara said softly. He looked up at her, surprised. My turn to ask, he said quickly, trying to change the subject. What's something you want that you don't think you can have? The question hung in the air between them. Zara's eyes met his, and for a moment neither spoke. Elijah could feel his heart pounding, wondering if he'd crossed a line, if he'd made her uncomfortable. That's a tough one, she finally said. I guess, sometimes I worry that I'll have to choose between having a successful career and having a real life, family, love, all that. Especially in this industry. Especially as a black woman. The expectations are different. Elijah nodded, understanding. The double standard is real. I've seen it. It is, she agreed. But what about you? Same question. Elijah hesitated. The real answer was sitting right in front of him, but he couldn't say that. Instead he offered another truth. Connection. Real connection with someone who sees me, not my bank account or my company. You don't think that's possible? I don't know, he admitted. Most of my relationships have been complicated by who I am. Or who they thought I was. And who are you really? Zara asked, her voice soft in the dim light. Just a guy who got lucky with a tech idea and now has to pretend he knows what he's doing most of the time, Elijah said with a small laugh. A guy who reads comic books and still has his college car and sometimes eats cereal for dinner because he's too tired to cook. You cook? Zara asked, sounding surprised. I'm actually pretty good at it. It relaxes me. Another thing that doesn't fit the Elijah Williams CEO image. There's a lot about me that doesn't fit that image, he said, his eyes meeting hers. The air between them felt charged, filled with unspoken words and possibilities. Zara looked away first, glancing at her watch. We've been in here for hours, she said. Somebody must have noticed by now. You'd think so, Elijah agreed, trying not to sound disappointed by the change in subject. Security should be doing their rounds soon. Zara shifted her position, wincing slightly. Are you okay? Elijah asked, concerned. Just stiff from sitting on this hard floor, she said, rubbing her neck. Not exactly how I planned to spend my evening. Here, Elijah said, moving to sit behind her. May I? After a moment's hesitation, Zara nodded. Gently, he placed his hands on her shoulders and began to massage away the tension. Her muscles were tight, and she let out a small sigh as he worked his thumbs in slow circles. Where did you learn to do this? She asked, her voice slightly muffled as she dropped her head forward. I dated a physical therapist for a while, Elijah admitted. Picked up a few things. Lucky me, Zara murmured. Elijah tried to focus on the mechanical aspect of what he was doing, tried not to think about how soft her skin was where it met the collar of her blouse, how her perfume seemed to envelop him, how intimate this felt in the quiet, dim elevator. Better? He asked after a few minutes, reluctantly dropping his hands. Much, she said, turning to face him. Thank you. They were close again, perhaps closer than before. Elijah could see a small scar above her right eyebrow, something he'd never noticed in their office interactions. How did you get that? He asked, almost reaching up to touch it before catching himself. Zara's hand went to the scar. Bike accident when I was 10. I was trying to jump a homemade ramp like my brother. Fearless even then, Elijah smiled. Stupid more like, she laughed. My mom grounded me for a week. My mom would have done the same, Elijah said. She didn't put up with any nonsense even though it was just the two of us. Your dad wasn't around? Zara asked. Elijah shook his head. Left when I was 4. I barely remember him. I'm sorry. Don't be. My mom was amazing. Worked 2 jobs to take care of me, still came to every science fair and ball game. She's the reason I worked so hard. I wanted to give her everything she'd given up for me. Is she? She passed away 3 years ago, Elijah said quietly. Heart attack. It was sudden. Zara reached out and took his hand. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. The worst part is that she never got to see all this. He gestured vaguely, indicating his success. The company was just starting to take off when she died. She saw you start though, Zara said. She saw you have the courage to chase your dreams. I bet she was incredibly proud. Elijah squeezed her hand, touched by her understanding. Thank you for saying that. They sat in silence for a moment, still holding hands. Then the elevator jerked again, more violently this time. The lights went out completely, plunging them into darkness. Zara gasped, and Elijah instinctively pulled her closer. It's okay, he said, his voice steady despite his own fear. The emergency backup should kick in. But seconds ticked by and they remained in darkness. Elijah could feel Zara trembling slightly against him. He wrapped an arm around her, holding her close. I've got you, he whispered. We're going to be fine. In the dark, their other senses seemed heightened. Elijah was acutely aware of the softness of Zara's hair against his cheek, the warmth of her body pressed to his, the faint scent of her perfume mixed with something that was uniquely her. Elijah, she said softly, her voice so close to his ear that it sent shivers down his spine. There's something I need to tell you. What is it? He asked, his heart racing. Before she could answer, the emergency lights flickered back on, dimmer than before but enough to see by. They were tangled together now, Zara practically in his lap, their faces inches apart. Neither moved away. I've wanted to talk to you, really talk to you, for months, she admitted. But you always seemed so distant, so unreachable. I thought you didn't like me, or maybe that you regretted hiring me. That couldn't be further from the truth, Elijah said, his voice rough with emotion. The truth is, I couldn't talk to you because every time I tried, my mind went blank. Because you're the most fascinating person I've ever met, and I was terrified of saying something stupid. Zara's eyes widened. Are you saying? I'm saying that being stuck in this elevator with you is both the most terrifying and the best thing that's ever happened to me, Elijah said, finally finding the courage to be completely honest. Because for the first time, I'm not Elijah Williams the CEO. I'm just Elijah. And you're not seeing the facade I put up for everyone else. Zara's hand came up to rest on his cheek. I like this Elijah much better than the CEO version. Their eyes met, and in that moment all the barriers between them, professional, personal, self-imposed, seemed to dissolve. Elijah couldn't say who moved first, but suddenly they were kissing, tentatively at first, then with growing intensity. Her lips were soft against his, her hands in his hair, and he pulled her closer, losing himself in the feel of her. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Zara looked as stunned as he felt. I probably shouldn't have done that, Elijah said, though he couldn't bring himself to regret it. Probably not, Zara agreed and then smiled. But I'm glad you did. Before either could say more, a crackling sound came from the elevator's intercom system, followed by a voice. Hello? Is anyone in there? This is building security. Elijah and Zara looked at each other, both realizing that their time alone together was coming to an end. Reality was about to intrude on the unexpected connection they'd found in this suspended space between their normal lives. Yes. Elijah called back. There are 2 of us trapped in here. We've been here for hours. We're working on getting you out, sir, the security guard replied. Maintenance is on their way. Should be about 20 more minutes. Thank you, Elijah said, then turned back to Zara. Well, looks like our adventure is almost over. What happens when those doors open? She asked quietly. Do we go back to being CEO and employee? Pretend this never happened. Elijah took her hand, intertwining their fingers. Is that what you want? Zara shook her head. No. But I also don't want to be the office scandal, or have people think I'm sleeping with the boss for advancement. We'll figure it out, Elijah promised, bringing her hand to his lips. Whatever you're comfortable with. But I don't want to lose you, now that I've finally found the courage to talk to you. Zara smiled, leaning in to kiss him again, softly this time. Who would have thought it would take getting stuck in an elevator to bring the great Elijah Williams to his knees? I'd gladly get stuck in elevators for the rest of my life if it meant being with you, he said, only half joking. As they waited for rescue, holding each other in the dim light, both knew that whatever happened next, their lives had irrevocably changed. The elevator that had trapped them had also freed them in unexpected ways, breaking down walls they might never have crossed otherwise. And though they didn't know it yet, this night was just the beginning of their story. The maintenance team arrived 20 minutes later, just as promised. Elijah and Zara could hear them working on the doors, the sounds of tools and muffled voices filtering through the metal. "Are you ready?" Elijah asked softly, still holding Zara's hand. She nodded, but there was uncertainty in her eyes. "I guess we should probably not be holding hands when the doors open." Reluctantly, Elijah released her. She was right, of course. Whatever was happening between them, they needed time to figure it out away from curious eyes and office gossip. They both stood and quickly tried to make themselves presentable. Zara smoothed her hair and straightened her blouse, while Elijah rolled down his sleeves and retied his tie. They gathered their discarded jackets and phones, trying to erase the evidence of their hours of intimacy. "You've got some lipstick," Zara whispered, reaching up to wipe a smudge from the corner of his mouth. The simple touch sent electricity through him. "Thanks," he murmured, catching her hand briefly before letting it go. The elevator jerked, and then they heard a loud clang as the doors were forced partially open. A flashlight beam cut through the gap. "Mr. Williams? Miss Bennett? Are you okay in there?" It was Ron, the head of building security. "We're fine, Ron," Elijah called back. "Just ready to get out of here. We've got the doors partially open, but we need to get the elevator aligned with the floor first. Should be just a few more minutes." Elijah and Zara stood side by side, no longer touching but intensely aware of each other. In the harsh beam of the flashlight, the spell of their isolation seemed to be breaking, reality intruding more with each passing second. "Elijah," Zara said quietly, her voice barely audible over the sounds of the rescue operation. "I need you to know that what happened in here was real for me. It wasn't just the situation or the stress or... It was real for me too," he assured her. "More real than anything has felt in a long time." She gave him a small smile, relief evident in her eyes. "So what do we do now?" "We take it one day at a time," Elijah said. "We figure it out together." Before Zara could respond, there was a loud grinding sound, and the elevator shifted upward slightly. The doors were pulled open wider, revealing the 30th floor hallway and several concerned faces peering in at them. "Thank goodness you're both all right," Ron exclaimed. "We've been looking all over for you. When Mr. Williams missed his 9 p.m. security check-in call, we knew something was wrong." Elijah helped Zara step through the gap first, then followed her out into the brightly lit hallway. After hours in the dim elevator, the fluorescent lights were almost painful. A small crowd had gathered, 2 maintenance workers, Ron, and another security guard. Elijah could see them taking in his and Zara's slightly rumpled appearance, the obvious signs that they'd been through an ordeal. "How long were you stuck in there?" one of the maintenance men asked. Elijah checked his watch. "About 5 hours." 5 hours? Ron repeated, shocked. "In that tiny space? That must have been terrible." Elijah's eyes met Zara's briefly. "It actually wasn't as bad as you might think." "Well, we've called the elevator company," the maintenance worker said. "They'll have someone out first thing tomorrow to fix it properly. But for now it's out of commission." "We should get you both checked out," Ron suggested. "Make sure you're okay." "We're fine," Zara assured him. "Just tired. I think we'd both like to go home and get some rest." Of course, Ron nodded. "Let me escort you both down. We'll have to take the stairs to the 29th floor and then use the other elevator bank." As they started toward the stairwell, Elijah found himself walking beside Zara, their arms occasionally brushing. Every point of contact sent sparks through him, reminders of what had happened in that suspended space. "You're sure you're okay?" he asked her quietly while Ron led the way ahead of them. "Yes," she said. "Just processing everything." When they reached the lobby, Ron insisted on calling them both cars. "Company policy after any incident," he explained. "And Mr. Williams, I've already informed Mr. Peterson about what happened." Elijah groaned internally. Thomas Peterson was his COO and would undoubtedly have questions, lots of them, about the elevator incident. That was a conversation he wasn't looking forward to. "Thank you, Ron," he said. "We appreciate all your help." As they waited for their cars, standing a professional distance apart in the quiet lobby, Elijah felt a strange mixture of emotions. On one hand, he was elated about the connection he'd found with Zara. On the other, he was already missing the simplicity of the elevator, where they'd just been 2 people with no complications or outside world to consider. "Your car is here first, Ms. Bennett," Ron announced, looking at his phone. Zara nodded, then turned to Elijah. "Thank you, Mr. Williams, for staying calm during our predicament. It made the situation much more bearable. Her formal tone was for Ron's benefit, but her eyes told a different story. They were warm and full of unspoken promises. "It was my pleasure, Ms. Bennett," Elijah replied, matching her professional demeanor while trying to convey so much more. "Perhaps we can discuss the experience further tomorrow? Say, over lunch?" A small smile played at the corner of her lips. "I think that would be appropriate. To debrief about the incident." "Exactly. For the incident report." Ron looked between them, clearly confused by the strange undercurrent in their exchange, but he said nothing. Zara gathered her things and headed for the door. Just before stepping outside, she glanced back at Elijah, a private look meant just for him. Then she was gone, sliding into the back of the waiting car, leaving Elijah standing in the lobby with a head full of questions and a heart full of hope. Elijah barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Zara's face in the dim light of the elevator, felt the softness of her lips against his, heard the gentle cadence of her voice as she shared pieces of herself with him. By the time dawn broke, he had replayed their conversations 100 times, analyzing every word, every touch, every glance. He got up early, showering and dressing with unusual care. Normally, his morning routine was efficient and mindless. One of several nearly identical designer suits, a quick breakfast while scanning the morning's business news, a car waiting to take him to the office. Today he found himself standing in front of his closet for 15 minutes, debating between ties. It was ridiculous and he knew it. Zara had seen him at his most vulnerable, his most authentic. She wouldn't care what tie he wore. Still he chose the deep blue one that brought out his eyes. His phone rang as he was pouring his coffee. Thomas Peterson, his COO and oldest friend. "You're alive then," Thomas said when Elijah answered. "Ron told me about your elevator adventure. 5 hours stuck with the marketing director? That must have been excruciating for a social butterfly like you." Thomas was one of the few people who knew about Elijah's social anxiety, who understood that his reserved demeanor wasn't arrogance but genuine discomfort. "It was unexpected," Elijah said carefully. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Unexpected? That's all I get? Come on, man. You were trapped in a small box with the woman you've been pining over for months. Give me something." Elijah nearly dropped his coffee. "What are you talking about?" Thomas laughed. "Please. I've known you for 15 years. You think I haven't noticed how you act around her? The stammering? The blushing? The way you mysteriously need to leave the room whenever she enters it? Was I really that obvious?" Elijah groaned. "To me? Yes. To everyone else? Probably. To her? Who knows?" Elijah thought about the kiss they'd shared, the confessions whispered in the dark. "I think she might have figured it out." "Wait." Thomas's voice sharpened. "Something happened, didn't it? Elijah Williams, did you finally make a move?" "It's complicated," Elijah said, unwilling to share the details of what had transpired between him and Zara. It felt too new, too fragile. "We're having lunch today to talk about it." "You asked her to lunch?" Thomas sounded impressed. "That's progress." "It's just to figure things out," Elijah said, though even he could hear the hope in his voice. "I don't know what happens next." "Well, whatever you do, remember that she works for you," Thomas said, suddenly serious. "I'm all for you finding happiness, but as your COO, I have to point out the potential HR issues." "I know," Elijah said. "Trust me, it's all I've been thinking about." After hanging up with Thomas, Elijah finished his coffee and headed for the office. The moment he stepped into the building lobby, he felt different. The space held new meaning now. It was where he'd last seen Zara, where they'd exchanged that secret look before parting ways. The security guard nodded to him. "Morning, Mr. Williams. Glad to see you're okay after last night's incident." "Thank you, James. Any progress on fixing the elevator?" "Company's here now working on it. Should be back in service by this afternoon." Elijah took the other elevator bank up to the executive floor, his stomach doing a strange flip as the doors closed. Every elevator ride would remind him of Zara now. When he reached his office, his assistant Sarah was already at her desk, a look of concern on her face. "Mr. Williams, I heard about what happened. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Sarah. Just a bit tired." "I've moved your morning meetings to give you some time to recover," she said, pulling up his schedule on her tablet. "And the elevator company sent over an incident form for you to fill out." "Thank you," Elijah said, taking the tablet from her. "Also, I'll be taking a lunch meeting today at noon. Can you make a reservation at Luciana's? Table for 2, private booth if possible." Sarah raised an eyebrow but kept her expression professional. Of course. Should I put it on your calendar? Who will you be meeting with? Ms. Bennett from marketing, Elijah said, trying to sound casual. We need to debrief about the elevator situation. Sarah nodded, but there was a knowing look in her eyes that made Elijah wonder if his feelings for Zara had truly been as transparent as Thomas suggested. Inside his office, Elijah tried to focus on work. He had emails to answer, reports to review, decisions to make. But his mind kept drifting to the 30th floor, wondering if Zara was at her desk, if she was thinking about him too, if she was having second thoughts in the harsh light of day. At 10:30 his intercom buzzed. Mr. Williams, Ms. Bennett is here to see you. Elijah's heart leapt into his throat. He hadn't expected to see her until lunch. Send her in. The door opened and there she was. Zara looked as polished and professional as always in a tailored navy suit, her hair swept up in a neat bun. But there was something different about her, a softness in her eyes when they met his, a slight flush to her cheeks. Miss Bennett, he said formally, aware of Sarah's curious gaze from the outer office. Please come in. Zara stepped inside and he closed the door behind her. For a moment they just looked at each other, the air charged with unspoken words. I couldn't wait until lunch, Zara said finally, her voice low. I needed to see you to make sure. To make sure it was real? Elijah finished for her. Not just something that happened because we were trapped and stressed. She nodded, searching his face. Was it? In answer, Elijah took a step forward, closing the distance between them. Slowly, giving her every chance to step away, he reached for her hand. When their fingers intertwined, he felt the same jolt of electricity that had coursed through him in the elevator. It was real, he said simply. At least for me. For me too, Zara whispered. I haven't been able to think about anything else. Relief flooded through him. So what do we do now? Because I meant what I said last night. I don't want to lose this. But I also understand the complications. Zara squeezed his hand. That's why I came early. I've been thinking about it all night and I have a proposal. I'm listening. We take it slow, she said. Very slow. We get to know each other properly outside of work. And we keep it completely private for now. I can do slow, Elijah agreed. And private. And, Zara continued, I think we should consider the company policies. If this becomes something serious, one of us might need to make changes professionally. I want to be clear that I would never use our personal relationship to advance my career. I know that, Elijah assured her. Your work speaks for itself. And if it comes to that, we'll figure it out together. She smiled, the tension visibly leaving her shoulders. Good. So lunch is still on? Absolutely. I've asked Sarah to make a reservation at Luciana's private booth. Perfect. Zara released his hand, stepping back to a more professional distance. I should get back to my office. I have the Johnson presentation in an hour. Good luck, Elijah said. Though you won't need it. You're going to be brilliant as always. A soft blush colored her cheeks at the compliment. Thank you. I'll see you at noon? I'll meet you in the lobby, he promised. To avoid any elevator incidents. Zara laughed, the sound warming him from the inside out. Probably wise, though I have to say, I might never look at elevators the same way again. After she left, Elijah found himself standing in the middle of his office, grinning like a teenager. For the first time in years, maybe ever, he felt a lightness in his chest, a sense of possibility that had nothing to do with business deals or profit margins. He returned to his desk, suddenly energized. He had 2 hours until lunch, and he intended to be incredibly productive so that he could give Zara his full, undivided attention. At 11:55 he was in the lobby, nervously adjusting his tie. He watched the main entrance, expecting Zara to come from outside, when he felt a tap on his shoulder. Looking for someone? He turned to find her standing behind him, a playful smile on her lips. How did you? I took the stairs, she explained. All 30 flights. Seemed safer than risking another elevator malfunction. Elijah laughed, amazed and impressed. You climbed 30 flights of stairs in those heels just to avoid an elevator? No, she said, her eyes meeting his. I climbed 30 flights of stairs to avoid being alone in an elevator with you. I'm not sure my willpower could handle it. The honesty of her admission sent heat rushing through him. I've arranged for a car, he managed to say. It's waiting outside. The ride to the restaurant was filled with a different kind of tension than the one they'd experienced in the elevator. This was anticipation, excitement, the thrill of something new beginning. They sat close but not touching, both acutely aware of the driver's presence. Luciana's was the kind of place that catered to business executives who valued privacy. The maitre d' led them to a secluded booth in the back, partially screened from the rest of the restaurant by elegant partitions. Once they were seated and had ordered, Elijah finally felt like he could breathe normally again. "How did your presentation go?" he asked. "Really well," Zara said, a touch of pride in her voice. "The Johnson team loved the campaign concept. They've preliminarily approved the budget, pending final review next week." "That's fantastic," Elijah said sincerely. "The company's lucky to have you." "Thank you." She took a sip of her water. "But I didn't climb 30 flights of stairs to talk about work." "No." Elijah smiled. "What did you climb 30 flights of stairs for then?" "To continue our game of truth," Zara said. "I feel like I've only scratched the surface of who Elijah Williams really is." Their food arrived, momentarily pausing their conversation. Once the server had left, Elijah leaned forward slightly. "All right, truth it is. Your turn to ask a question." Zara thought for a moment. "What's your biggest fear?" Elijah hadn't expected such a deep question right off the bat, but after the intimacy they'd shared in the elevator, surface-level small talk seemed pointless. "Ending up alone," he admitted. "Not just romantically but truly alone. No real connections, no one who really knows me." He cut into his salmon, avoiding her eyes for a moment. "What about you?" "Failing," Zara said simply. "Not living up to my potential. Letting down the people who believed in me when no one else did." Elijah nodded, understanding. "Is that why you work so hard?" "I've noticed you're always the first one in, last one out." "Partly," she acknowledged. "But also because I love what I do. Marketing isn't just a job for me, it's a passion." She tilted her head, studying him. "Is running Williams Tech a passion for you or a burden?" "Both," Elijah said after a moment's reflection. "I love creating things that change how people live and work. But the business side, the endless meetings, the politics, the public persona I have to maintain, that part can be exhausting." "Is that why you stay so isolated? Even from your own executive team?" Elijah raised an eyebrow. "Have you been analyzing me, Miss Bennett?" "Professional hazard," she smiled. "I observe people. And you're interesting to observe." "Am I?" "Very. You're this contradiction, the brilliant, successful CEO who seems to have everything, but who can't look his marketing director in the eye. The man whose face is on the cover of business magazines but who hides in his office most of the time." It made me curious. "And now?" Elijah asked softly. "Now that you've seen behind the curtain?" Zara reached across the table, her fingers brushing against his. "Now I want to see more." The rest of lunch passed in a blur of conversation that flowed as easily as it had in the elevator. They shared stories from their childhoods, dreams for the future, favorite books and movies and places they wanted to visit. By the time they finished dessert, Elijah felt like he'd known Zara for years instead of months. As they prepared to leave, Zara's phone buzzed with a message. She checked it, her expression changing slightly. "Everything okay?" Elijah asked. "Fine," she said, putting the phone away. "Just my mother. She's visiting next weekend and wants to know if I can pick her up from the airport." Elijah paid the bill, waving away Zara's attempt to contribute. "This was my invitation," he insisted. "Next time can be your treat." "Next time," she repeated, a small smile playing on her lips. "I like the sound of that." Outside, their car was waiting to take them back to the office. As they settled into the back seat, Elijah found himself wishing they could go somewhere else, anywhere else. Back to the simple clarity of the elevator, where they'd just been two people connecting, without the complications of their professional relationship. "I had a wonderful time," Zara said softly, her hand finding his between them on the seat, hidden from the driver's view. "So did I," Elijah replied, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "When can I see you again? Outside of work, I mean." "Tomorrow night?" she suggested. "I know this little jazz club downtown. Very discreet, great music." "It's a date," Elijah said, the word sending a thrill through him. A real date with Zara Bennett. Something he'd dreamed about but never thought would actually happen. As the car pulled up to the Williams Tech building, reality intruded once more. They would need to go back to being professional, to keeping a careful distance. But now there was a secret between them, a connection that transformed everything. "Back to real life," Zara sighed, reluctantly releasing his hand. "For now," Elijah agreed. "But I'm already counting the hours until tomorrow night." She smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Me too." They entered the building separately, Zara going first while Elijah pretended to take a call outside. As he watched her walk across the lobby, confident, poised, beautiful, he felt a strange mix of emotions. Elation at what was beginning between them. Anxiety about the complications they faced. And underneath it all, a deep certainty that whatever happened next, his life would never be the same. What neither of them noticed was Thomas Peterson, standing near the reception desk, watching them both with curious eyes. The jazz club was exactly as Zara had described it. Intimate, dimly lit, with small tables arranged around a central stage where a quartet played smooth, soulful music. It was the kind of place where people came to get lost in the music, not to see and be seen. Perfect for a couple trying to keep their relationship private. Elijah arrived first, choosing a table in a shadowy corner. He'd dressed down for the occasion, swapping his usual designer suit for dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt. Still, he felt conspicuous, like everyone must know who he was, must be wondering what Elijah Williams was doing in a small jazz club on a Thursday night. But no one gave him a second glance. Without the trappings of his CEO persona, he was just another patron enjoying the music. The anonymity was refreshing. Zara arrived 15 minutes later, slipping through the door like a dream manifested. She wore a deep red dress that hugged her curves, her hair loose around her shoulders. Without the professional attire she wore at work, she looked softer, more approachable, yet somehow even more stunning. Elijah stood as she approached, his breath catching in his throat. "You look beautiful," he said, pulling out her chair. "Thank you," she smiled, sitting down. "You look different. Good different. I don't think I've ever seen you in jeans before." "I do own clothes other than suits," he laughed. "Though admittedly not many." A server came to take their drink orders, and then they were alone again, the music washing over them, creating a private cocoon in the public space. "I've been thinking about you," Zara admitted, her eyes meeting his across the table. "About us. About how strange it is that 24 hours in an elevator could change everything." "I've been thinking about that too," Elijah said. "How something that seemed like such bad luck turned out to be the opposite. It's funny, isn't it? How life works." Zara leaned forward slightly. "If the elevator hadn't broken down, we might have gone on as we were, you avoiding me, me thinking you didn't like me, for who knows how long." "I never avoided you because I didn't like you," Elijah said softly. "I avoided you because I liked you too much and I didn't know what to do about it." The server returned with their drinks, momentarily interrupting their conversation. When they were alone again, Zara raised her glass in a small toast. "To elevators," she said, her eyes sparkling. "And to whatever comes next." "To whatever comes next," Elijah agreed, clinking his glass against hers. As the evening progressed, the conversation flowed as easily as it had in the elevator and at lunch. But there was a different quality to it now, more relaxed, more intimate. Without the confines of the office or the stress of being trapped, they were free to simply enjoy each other's company. Elijah found himself telling Zara things he'd never shared with anyone, about the early days of his company, when he'd been so terrified of failure that he'd worked 20-hour days and slept on the office floor, about the loneliness of success, how reaching the top had isolated him from the people around him, about his dreams beyond Williams Tech, the things he still wanted to accomplish. In turn, Zara opened up about her own journey, growing up in a small town where few people left, defying expectations by winning a scholarship to a prestigious university, fighting to be taken seriously in a field dominated by men who often dismissed her ideas because of her gender and race. She spoke of her ambitions, her desire to eventually start her own agency, her commitment to mentoring other young women of color in the industry. "You could do that at Williams Tech," Elijah suggested. "Start a mentorship program. I'd fully support it." Zara looked at him thoughtfully. "You would, wouldn't you? That's one of the things I'm coming to really appreciate about you. Despite your awkward exterior, you genuinely want to help people succeed. Is that how you see me? Awkward but well-meaning?" Elijah asked, pretending to be offended. "Among other things," Zara laughed. "I also see you as brilliant, kind, surprisingly funny, and—" She paused, her eyes meeting his, "incredibly attractive when you're not hiding behind your CEO mask." The directness of her compliment sent heat rushing to Elijah's face. He wasn't used to this, to being seen so clearly, to having someone speak to him without the filter of his position or wealth. "Dance with me?" he asked suddenly as the quartet transitioned to a slow, melodic number. Zara raised an eyebrow. "In front of all these people? What happened to keeping things private?" "No one here knows us," Elijah said, standing and offering his hand. "We're just a couple enjoying the music." A couple. The word hung between them, new and thrilling. After a moment's hesitation, Zara placed her hand in his and allowed him to lead her to the small dance floor where a few other couples were swaying to the music. Elijah pulled her close, one hand at the small of her back, the other still holding hers. They moved together with surprising synchronicity, as if they'd been dancing together for years. "I didn't know you could dance," Zara murmured, her cheek resting against his shoulder. "My mother insisted I take lessons as a teenager," Elijah admitted. "Said every gentleman should know how to dance properly." "Smart woman. She would have liked you," Elijah said softly. "She always told me to find someone who would challenge me, not just agree with everything I said." Zara looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. "And do I challenge you?" "In the best possible way," he assured her. The song ended, but neither moved to step apart. Instead, Elijah leaned down, his lips finding hers in a gentle kiss that quickly deepened into something more intense, more consuming. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Zara's eyes were wide with surprise and desire. "Maybe we should get out of here," she suggested, her voice husky. Elijah nodded, suddenly finding it difficult to form words. They returned to their table to pay the bill, then stepped out into the cool night air, the sounds of the jazz club fading behind them. "My apartment isn't far," Zara said, a question in her eyes. "Just a few blocks." Elijah hesitated. He wanted nothing more than to go with her, to continue what they'd started on the dance floor. But he also meant what he'd said about taking things slow, about giving this fragile new connection the respect it deserved. "I'd love to see your place," he said carefully, "but maybe we should save that for another night. I meant what I said about taking this slowly. I don't want to rush into anything." Instead of being disappointed, Zara looked at him with new appreciation. "That's surprisingly sweet. And probably wise." She stepped closer, her hands coming to rest on his chest. "But that doesn't mean the night has to end just yet. There's a little all-night diner around the corner that makes the best milkshakes in the city." Elijah smiled, relieved that she understood. "Lead the way." The diner was a classic chrome and neon establishment with red vinyl booths and a jukebox in the corner. It was nearly empty at this hour, just a couple of night shift workers grabbing a late dinner and a group of college students studying over coffee. They slid into a booth at the back, ordered milkshakes, chocolate for him, strawberry for her, and continued their conversation as if they'd never left the jazz club. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously, hours passing in what felt like minutes. Before they knew it, it was nearly 2 a.m. "I should get you home," Elijah said reluctantly, noticing Zara trying to hide a yawn. "We both have work tomorrow." "Being responsible is overrated," Zara sighed, but she nodded. "Though I suppose you're right. The Johnson team is coming in for a final review at 9 a.m. Elijah insisted on walking her to her apartment, though it was several blocks out of his way. The streets were quiet at this hour, and they walked hand in hand, occasionally stopping to steal kisses under the glow of street lamps. When they reached her building, a converted warehouse in an up-and-coming neighborhood, Elijah pulled her into his arms for one last kiss. "Tonight was perfect," he whispered against her lips. "It was," she agreed. "When can I see you again?" "Tomorrow's Friday," Elijah said. "What if we get out of the city for the weekend? I have a small cabin upstate. It's peaceful, private. We could leave after work." The invitation hung in the air between them. It was a significant step, a weekend together away from the world. "I'd like that," Zara said after a moment. "A lot." Relief and anticipation flooded through Elijah. "I'll have Sarah clear my schedule. Can you be ready by 6? "I'll pack a bag and bring it to work," Zara promised. "We can leave straight from the office, separately of course." With one final kiss, they parted for the night. Elijah waited until Zara was safely inside her building before turning to walk back toward the main avenue where he could hail a cab. His mind was already racing ahead to the weekend, to the precious hours they would have together away from the complications of their professional lives. What he didn't notice was the dark sedan parked across the street, or the camera lens capturing his farewell embrace with Zara. He didn't see the figure in the driver's seat, smiling with satisfaction as they lowered the camera and pulled away from the curb. He was too caught up in thoughts of Zara, her smile, her laugh, the feel of her in his arms, to notice anything else. Too captivated by the unexpected joy that had entered his life to see the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The Williams Tech offices were buzzing with unusual activity when Elijah arrived Friday morning. He noticed it immediately, the hushed conversations that stopped when he walked by, the curious glances, the sense that something significant had happened. At first, he attributed it to end-of-week excitement, or perhaps news about a competitor that hadn't reached his desk yet. Sarah was waiting at her desk, a strange expression on her face. "Good morning, Mr. Williams. You have several calls waiting. Mr. Peterson has been trying to reach you since 7 a.m. Elijah checked his phone with a frown. There were indeed 5 missed calls from Thomas, which was unusual. Thomas rarely called before their scheduled morning briefing at 9 a.m. "Is everything okay?" Elijah asked, suddenly concerned. "Has something happened with the Asian market expansion?" Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "I think you should check your email, sir. And then call Mr. Peterson." Alarmed now, Elijah hurried into his office and opened his laptop. His inbox was flooded with messages, many with subject lines containing words like urgent, and response needed, and comment request. He clicked on the most recent one from his head of public relations. The email contained a link to a gossip blog called Tech Insider. With growing dread, Elijah clicked on it. The webpage loaded to reveal a headline that made his blood run cold: Billionaire Tech CEO's Secret Office Romance. Exclusive photos of Elijah Williams and employee. Below the sensationalistic headline were several grainy but unmistakable photos. Elijah and Zara entering the jazz club. Elijah and Zara dancing, their bodies close. Elijah and Zara kissing outside her apartment building. Each image was time-stamped and captioned with suggestive commentary about workplace relationships and power dynamics. The article itself was brief but damaging, full of innuendo and unnamed sources close to the company, claiming that this wasn't the first time Williams had shown special interest in female employees. It implied that Zara's rapid rise within the company might be due to factors other than her professional abilities. Elijah felt physically ill. Not for himself, he'd dealt with tabloid gossip before, but for Zara. This was exactly what she'd feared, what they'd been trying to avoid by keeping their relationship private. And now, after just one real date, her reputation was being dragged through the mud. His phone rang again. "Thomas, have you seen it?" Thomas asked without preamble when Elijah answered. "Just now," Elijah confirmed, his voice tight. "How bad is this, Thomas?" "Bad," his friend admitted. "It's spreading fast. The mainstream tech blogs have picked it up, and I just got a call from the Wall Street Journal asking for comment." "Who took those photos? Who would do this?" "That's not important right now," Thomas said. "What matters is damage control. PR is drafting a statement, but they need direction. Are you going to deny it or confirm it?" Elijah rubbed his forehead, trying to think clearly through the shock and anger. "I need to talk to Zara first. This affects her more than me." "I understand that, but we need to move quickly. The board is already calling emergency meetings. There are concerns about legal liability, sexual harassment claims." "That's ridiculous," Elijah cut in. "This is a mutual relationship between 2 consenting adults. There's been no harassment, no coercion." "I believe you," Thomas said, his voice softening slightly. "But perception is reality in situations like this, especially given the power differential. And the company bylaws are clear about relationships between executives and their direct reports." Elijah knew Thomas was right. The company's ethics policy, which he himself had helped draft, strongly discouraged relationships within the same reporting line. While not explicitly forbidden, such relationships required disclosure to HR and usually resulted in a change of reporting structure. "I need to find Zara," Elijah said. "Is she in the building?" "I don't think she's come in yet. Her assistant said she had a doctor's appointment this morning and wouldn't be in until 10. As soon as she arrives, I need to see her. Before anyone else talks to her." "Agreed," Thomas said. "In the meantime, I'll hold off PR and the board as long as I can. But Elijah, this isn't going away. You need to decide how you want to handle it." After hanging up, Elijah sat at his desk, staring at the offending article. He tried calling Zara's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. He sent a text. "Have you seen the article? We need to talk. I'm so sorry about this." The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. Elijah canceled his morning meetings, unable to focus on anything but the crisis at hand and his concern for Zara. By 10:15, there was still no sign of her, no response to his messages. Finally, at 10:30, Sarah buzzed his intercom. "Ms. Bennett is here to see you, Mr. Williams." "Send her in right away," Elijah said, his heart pounding. The door opened and Zara stepped inside. She looked composed, professional in a tailored gray suit, but Elijah could see the strain around her eyes, the slight pallor beneath her warm brown skin. He crossed the room in 3 strides, taking her hands in his. "Zara, I'm so sorry about this. I had no idea anyone was watching us." "It's not your fault," she said, her voice steady though her hands trembled slightly in his. Neither of us could have known. Have you seen the article? He asked gently. She nodded. My sister sent it to me this morning. Apparently, it's all over social media. Elijah led her to the small sitting area in his office, keeping hold of her hand as they sat down together on the sofa. Are you okay? I'm angry, Zara admitted. Not at you, at whoever did this. At the fact that they're making something beautiful sound sordid and wrong. Relief flooded through Elijah at her words. She didn't blame him. She wasn't pulling away. The board is meeting, he told her. PR wants to issue a statement. We need to decide how to handle this. Zara was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant. I've worked so hard to be taken seriously, she said finally. To be respected for my mind, my ideas, my work. And now people will look at me and think I slept my way to the top. No one who knows you would ever think that, Elijah insisted. Your work speaks for itself. But not everyone knows me, Zara pointed out. And first impressions matter in this industry. Future employers will Google my name and this will come up. The implication that she was thinking about future employers sent a chill through Elijah. Are you thinking of leaving Williams Tech? Zara met his eyes directly. I think I have to consider it. Not because I want to, I love my job, my team. But this changes things, Elijah. You know it does. He did know, but hearing her say it made it painfully real. There might be another way, he said. We could restructure so you don't report directly to me. You could report to Thomas instead. Would that really solve the problem? Everyone would still know. The whispers would follow me through the halls into every meeting. Then we face it head on, Elijah said, an idea forming. We don't hide or apologize. We acknowledge our relationship while making it clear that it began recently and has nothing to do with your position or performance. Zara looked skeptical. And you think people will believe that? That the board will be okay with it? I don't know, Elijah admitted. But I do know that I don't want to lose you, not from the company and certainly not from my life. Not when we've only just found each other. Something in his words seemed to reach her. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly and she squeezed his hand. I don't want that either. Before they could discuss further, Elijah's intercom buzzed again. Mr. Williams, the board is requesting your presence in the conference room immediately. They've called an emergency session. Elijah took a deep breath, steeling himself. I have to go. I know, Zara said, standing up. You should face them alone. This will be easier if I'm not there. No, Elijah said firmly, surprising himself with his certainty. We face this together. If we're going to be a couple, then we start acting like one right now. He held out his hand to her. That is, if you still want to be with me after all this. Zara looked at his outstretched hand, then at his face. Something she saw there seemed to decide her. She placed her hand in his and nodded. Together then. Hand in hand, they walked through the executive floor toward the conference room. Employees stopped to stare as they passed, whispers following in their wake. Elijah felt Zara's grip tighten, but she held her head high, her expression determined. The board members fell silent as Elijah and Zara entered the conference room. 8 stern faces turned toward them, expressions ranging from disapproval to curiosity. Thomas sat at the far end, his face carefully neutral. Beside him was Sandra Chin, the head of HR, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Mr. Williams, said Richard Dalton, the board chairman, an older man with steel-gray hair and cold eyes. We didn't expect you to bring company. Ms. Bennett is directly involved in the matter you've called this meeting to discuss, Elijah said calmly, guiding Zara to a seat beside him at the table. It seems only fair that she be included. Dalton's lips thinned in disapproval, but he nodded stiffly. Very well. I assume you've both seen the article that was published this morning? We have, Elijah confirmed. Then you understand our concern, Dalton continued. This situation raises serious questions about corporate governance and potential liability. Our ethics policy clearly states that relationships between executives and their direct reports must be disclosed to HR, Elijah finished for him. I'm aware of the policy. I helped write it. And yet you chose to ignore it, said Marjorie Wells, another board member, her tone accusatory. With respect, Ms. Wells, Zara spoke up, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. There was nothing to disclose until very recently. Mr. Williams and I have known each other professionally for 6 months, but our personal relationship only began 2 days ago. 2 days. Dalton repeated skeptically. The photos in that article suggest a level of intimacy that seems unlikely for such a new relationship. Elijah felt a surge of anger at the implication, but before he could respond, Thomas cleared his throat. "If I may," he said, "I can confirm that Elijah and Ms. Bennett were trapped in an elevator together 2 nights ago. Building security has the incident report. It seems that experience may have accelerated their connection." Several board members exchanged glances at this information. "Be that as it may," Dalton continued, "the optics of this situation are highly problematic. The company could face accusations of favoritism, sexual harassment." "There has been no harassment," Zara interrupted firmly. "No coercion, no pressure. Our relationship is completely consensual and mutual." "The power dynamics make that difficult to prove, Ms. Bennett," Sandra Chin said gently. "Especially given your rapid promotion within the company." "My promotion was based solely on my performance," Zara said, her voice taking on a harder edge. "My department has increased revenue by 22% since I took over. The Johnson account, which I secured personally, is worth $50 million. I earned my position." "No one is questioning your competence," Thomas assured her. "Aren't they?" Zara challenged, looking around the table. "Because it sounds to me like you're suggesting I couldn't have achieved my success on merit alone." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Elijah squeezed Zara's hand under the table, proud of her for standing her ground. "The fact remains," Dalton said finally, "that this relationship represents a breach of protocol and a potential conflict of interest. The board needs to decide how to address it." "I have a proposal," Elijah said, leaning forward slightly. "Effective immediately, the marketing department will report directly to Thomas as COO, rather than to me. This removes any direct reporting relationship between Ms. Bennett and myself." Thomas nodded. "I'm willing to take on that responsibility." "That addresses the structural issue," Sandra acknowledged, "but not the public perception problem. The article is already out there." "Then we respond to it honestly," Elijah said. "We issue a statement confirming that yes, Ms. Bennett and I are in a relationship that began recently, and yes, we're adjusting the reporting structure to address any potential conflicts. We don't apologize because we have nothing to apologize for." "That's a risky approach," Marjorie warned. "The media will have a field day." "They're already having a field day," Elijah pointed out. "At least this way we control the narrative." The board members exchanged glances, clearly uncertain. "There is another option," Dalton said carefully. "Ms. Bennett could voluntarily resign her position. With a generous severance package, of course. This would cleanly separate personal and professional matters." Zara stiffened beside Elijah. He felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. Would she consider it? Would she choose her career over what they'd found together? "With all due respect, Mr. Dalton," Zara said after a moment, her voice measured but firm, "I will not be pushed out of a job I excel at because I happen to fall for the wrong person. If the board decides to terminate my employment, that's their prerogative. But I will not resign." Pride and relief surged through Elijah in equal measure. Without thinking, he raised their joined hands and pressed a kiss to Zara's knuckles. Several board members looked away, uncomfortable with this display of affection. "I think we need to discuss this privately," Dalton said. "Mr. Williams, Ms. Bennett, if you could step outside for a few minutes." Elijah and Zara left the conference room, still holding hands. In the hallway, away from the board's scrutiny, Zara let out a shaky breath. "That was intense," she said quietly. "You were amazing," Elijah told her. "I'm sorry you had to defend yourself like that." "It won't be the last time," Zara said with a sad smile. "But thank you for standing by me in there. It would have been easier for you to distance yourself." "Never," Elijah said firmly. "Whatever happens, we're in this together now." They waited in tense silence for what felt like hours but was probably only 15 minutes. Finally, the conference room door opened and Thomas beckoned them back inside. Dalton cleared his throat as they took their seats. "The board has reached a decision. We will accept Mr. Williams' proposal to restructure the reporting lines, with marketing reporting to Mr. Peterson effective immediately. Ms. Bennett will remain in her current role, with a review in 3 months to ensure the new structure is working effectively." Relief flooded through Elijah. They weren't going to force Zara out. "Additionally," Dalton continued, "we will issue a brief statement confirming the relationship and the structural changes, following the approach Mr. Williams suggested. However," his gaze sharpened, "we expect both of you to maintain complete professionalism in the workplace. No public displays of affection, no preferential treatment, no using company resources for personal matters." "Of course," Elijah agreed quickly. "We understand the importance of keeping our personal and professional lives separate." One more thing, Sandra added. Both of you will need to sign updated conflict of interest declarations, acknowledging the relationship and the new reporting structure. Zara nodded. That seems reasonable. Very well, Dalton said, still looking displeased but resigned. That will be all for now. Mr. Peterson, please work with HR to implement the structural changes immediately. Mr. Williams, PR will contact you regarding the statement. As the meeting broke up, Thomas approached them. That went better than expected, he said quietly. Though I wouldn't say Richard is thrilled. He'll get over it, Elijah said, still feeling slightly stunned by the relatively positive outcome. Thank you for backing us up, Thomas. Don't thank me yet, his friend warned. This is just the beginning. The next few weeks won't be easy for either of you. Zara squeezed Elijah's hand. We can handle it. They left the boardroom together, ignoring the stares and whispers of employees they passed in the hallway. When they reached Elijah's office, he closed the door behind them, finally allowing his composed facade to slip. I can't believe that just happened, he said, running a hand through his hair. Are you really okay with all of this? The restructuring, the public statement. I think so, Zara said, looking thoughtful. It's not ideal, but it's better than the alternatives. And in a way, it's a relief not to have to hide. Elijah pulled her into his arms, suddenly needing to hold her, to reassure himself that she was really still there, still with him despite everything. She came willingly, her arms wrapping around his waist, her head resting against his chest. I'm so sorry about all of this, he murmured against her hair. This isn't how I wanted us to start. Zara looked up at him, her eyes serious but warm. Maybe it's better this way. Everything out in the open, no secrets, no sneaking around. Just us figuring it out together. Just us, Elijah repeated, liking the sound of it. So, is our weekend still on? Or would you rather stay in town, deal with the fallout? Actually, Zara said, a small smile playing at her lips, I think getting away is exactly what we need right now. Somewhere quiet where we can just be together without all of this. Relief and happiness surged through Elijah. 6 o'clock, he promised. I'll pick you up at your apartment. What happened to leaving separately? Zara teased. Well, since the whole world knows about us now, I think we can probably ride in the same car. Elijah laughed, the tension of the morning finally beginning to ease. As they stood there, holding each other in the quiet of his office, Elijah felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time. A sense of rightness, of belonging. Despite the tumult of the morning, despite the challenges that still lay ahead, he knew with absolute certainty that what they had found together was worth fighting for. What neither of them realized was that the photos and the article were just the opening salvo in a battle they didn't yet know they were fighting. Someone had deliberately exposed their relationship, and that someone wasn't finished with them yet. The cabin was nothing like what Zara had expected. When Elijah had described it as a small place upstate, she'd imagined something rustic but luxurious, the kind of mountain retreat featured in architectural magazines, all glass walls and designer furniture. What she found instead, after a 2-hour drive that took them deep into the Catskills, was a genuine log cabin nestled among towering pines. It was modest in size, with a slightly weathered exterior that suggested it had stood there for decades. No gleaming modern surfaces, no obvious signs of wealth or status. Just a simple, sturdy structure that looked like it belonged among the trees surrounding it. This is yours? Zara asked as Elijah pulled their car, his old Honda, not a luxury vehicle, onto the gravel driveway. It was my grandfather's, Elijah explained, cutting the engine. He built it himself in the 60s. My mom and I spent every summer here when I was growing up. The sun was setting as they stepped out of the car, casting the forest in a golden glow. The air smelled of pine and earth, and somewhere nearby, Zara could hear the gentle sound of running water. There's a stream just beyond those trees, Elijah said, following her gaze. Good for swimming in the summer, though it might be a bit cold this time of year. He unlocked the cabin door and carried their bags inside. Zara followed, curious to see the interior. Like the outside, it was unpretentious but charming. An open-plan living area with a stone fireplace, wooden floors covered with faded rugs and comfortable-looking furniture that had clearly been chosen for coziness rather than style. A small kitchen occupied one corner, and a narrow staircase led to what Zara assumed was a loft bedroom. It's not much, Elijah said, a note of uncertainty in his voice as he watched her take it all in. But it's peaceful. No internet, spotty cell service. Just. It's perfect, Zara interrupted, meaning it. There was something deeply appealing about the cabin's simplicity, its disconnect from the world they'd left behind. I love it. Relief and pleasure spread across Elijah's face. Really? I wasn't sure. I mean, it's not what most people expect when they hear Billionaire's retreat. Zara moved closer to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. I'm starting to think I prefer the non-billionaire version of Elijah Williams. He smiled down at her, his hands coming to rest at the small of her back. Good, because that's who I am here. Just Elijah. The kiss that followed was gentle at first, then deepened into something more insistent, more needy. After the stress and public scrutiny of the day, being able to touch each other freely, without worry about who might see or what they might think, was an immense relief. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Elijah rested his forehead against hers. I should probably start a fire before it gets dark. And we should think about dinner. I'll help, Zara offered, reluctantly stepping back from his embrace. What do we have to work with? While Elijah built a fire in the stone hearth, Zara explored the kitchen. The refrigerator was stocked with basics: eggs, butter, milk, cheese, and the pantry held pasta, canned goods, and a surprising array of spices. You really did come prepared, she called over to him. I called ahead and had Mrs. Winters, she's the caretaker's wife, stock the place up, Elijah admitted, arranging logs in the fireplace. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I asked her to get a bit of everything. The thoughtfulness of this gesture touched Zara deeply. It was these little things, the quiet considerations, the efforts to make her comfortable, that were making her fall for Elijah more with each passing hour. Together, they prepared a simple meal of pasta with garlic, olive oil, and whatever vegetables they found in the refrigerator. They worked in comfortable harmony, moving around the small kitchen as if they'd done this 100 times before. Elijah opened a bottle of red wine, pouring generous glasses for both of them. By the time dinner was ready, the fire was crackling merrily in the hearth, bathing the cabin in warm, flickering light. They ate at the small wooden table by the window, watching as darkness settled over the forest outside. So, Zara said, taking a sip of her wine, no one knows about this place? Not even Thomas. Elijah shook his head. Just the Winters, and they're the soul of discretion. This is my sanctuary. Where I come when I need to remember who I am beneath all the trappings of Williams Tech. And who is that? Zara asked softly. Elijah considered the question, his eyes reflecting the dancing flames from the fireplace. Just a guy who reads too much, thinks too much, and sometimes feels like he's playing a role he never auditioned for. He looked at her directly, then, his gaze intense. Until I met you, I'd almost forgotten what it feels like to just be myself. I know what you mean, Zara admitted. In my world, there's so much pressure to be on all the time, to be smarter, more creative, more driven than everyone else. Especially as a black woman in a field where people who look like me are still the exception, not the rule. Elijah reached across the table to take her hand. Is that why you work so hard? Why you're always the first one in, last one out? Partly, Zara nodded. But also because I genuinely love what I do. Marketing is this perfect blend of psychology, creativity, and strategy. When a campaign comes together exactly as I envisioned it, there's no better feeling. Except maybe this, Elijah said, raising their joined hands to his lips. After dinner, they moved to the sofa in front of the fire, curled together beneath a soft woolen blanket. The stress of the day seemed to melt away in the quiet intimacy of the cabin, replaced by a contentment neither had expected to find so quickly. What are you thinking? Elijah asked, noticing Zara's thoughtful expression as she gazed into the flames. I'm thinking that 24 hours ago, I was terrified about anyone finding out about us, she said honestly. And now that everyone knows, it's strangely liberating. It is, isn't it? Elijah agreed. Though I'm still furious about how it happened. Those photos, that article, making something genuine seem sordid. Zara turned to face him more fully. Do you have any idea who could have done it? Who would want to expose us like that? Elijah sighed. I have enemies, of course. Competitors who'd love to see me distracted or the company destabilized. But this feels more personal somehow. What do you mean? I don't know exactly, he admitted. Just a feeling. The timing of it, the way it was framed. Like someone was watching us specifically, waiting for the moment to cause maximum damage. A chill ran down Zara's spine that had nothing to do with the cool night air outside. You think someone's targeting us? Why? I don't know, Elijah said, pulling her closer as if to protect her from an unseen threat. Maybe I'm overthinking it. It could just be an opportunistic paparazzi who got lucky. But he didn't sound convinced, and Zara wasn't either. The thought that someone might be watching them, plotting against them, cast a momentary shadow over their peaceful retreat. Let's not think about it tonight, she suggested, pushing the unsettling thoughts away. This weekend is for us. Just us. Elijah's expression softened as he looked at her. Just us, he agreed, leaning in to kiss her. What had started as a gentle, comforting embrace quickly ignited into something more passionate, more urgent. Months of attraction, days of emotional intensity, and the relief of finally being alone together combined to create a powerful current between them. Elijah's hands tangled in Zara's hair as she pressed herself closer to him, her fingers working at the buttons of his shirt. Are you sure? He asked breathlessly when they broke apart for air, his eyes searching hers. In answer, Zara stood and held out her hand to him. Show me the bedroom? The loft was small but charming, with sloped ceilings and a large bed covered in what looked like handmade quilts. A window above the bed offered a view of the star-filled sky, no city lights to dim their brilliance. They came together again in the moonlight, all hesitation gone, all doubts forgotten. There was an honesty in their passion, a vulnerability that neither had expected but both embraced. Each touch, each kiss was a discovery, a revelation, a promise. Later, lying in each other's arms, both slightly breathless and wonderfully content, Zara traced idle patterns on Elijah's chest with her fingertips. What are you thinking now? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. That I'm glad we got stuck in that elevator, she said simply. That whatever happens next, I wouldn't trade these moments for anything. Elijah tightened his arms around her. Neither would I. They fell asleep that way, wrapped in each other's warmth, the world and its complications temporarily held at bay by the sanctuary they'd found in each other and in the quiet cabin among the trees. Morning arrived with gentle sunlight filtering through the window above the bed. Zara woke first, taking a moment to orient herself in the unfamiliar surroundings. Beside her, Elijah slept peacefully, his features relaxed in a way she'd never seen before. Without the tension and responsibility he carried daily, he looked younger, almost boyish. Careful not to wake him, she slipped out of bed, wrapped herself in his discarded shirt, and padded downstairs to make coffee. The cabin was cool in the morning air, the fire having died down to embers overnight. Zara stoked it back to life, adding logs from the stack beside the hearth, then moved to the kitchen to search for coffee supplies. She was standing at the counter, waiting for the coffee to brew, when warm arms encircled her from behind. Good morning, Elijah murmured against her neck, his voice still husky with sleep. Zara leaned back into his embrace. Good morning yourself. I hope you don't mind that I borrowed your shirt. It looks better on you anyway, he said, dropping a kiss on her shoulder. Though I'm not sure I'll ever be able to wear it again without thinking of this moment. They spent the morning in lazy contentment, sharing coffee and simple breakfast foods, talking about everything and nothing. No mention of work, no discussion of the article or its fallout. Just two people enjoying each other's company in a quiet corner of the world that felt like it belonged only to them. After breakfast, Elijah suggested a walk in the woods. The day was crisp but sunny, perfect for exploring. He led Zara along a narrow trail that wound through the trees, pointing out landmarks. From his childhood summers, the lightning-struck pine where he'd built a fort, the rocky outcropping where he'd once spotted a black bear, the clearing where wildflowers bloomed in profusion during summer months. You really love this place, Zara observed as they paused by the stream he'd mentioned the day before. It was wider than she'd expected, the water clear and swift over smooth stones. It's the one place where nothing has ever been expected of me, Elijah said. No meetings, no decisions affecting thousands of lives, no personas to maintain. Just me and the trees and the sky. And now me, Zara added softly. Elijah turned to her, his expression serious but warm. Yes, and now you. If you want to be. The question hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning beyond this weekend, beyond this moment. I do want to be, Zara said, reaching for his hand. I know it's fast and maybe we're crazy, but I feel like I've been waiting for you without even knowing it. Elijah's face lit up with a joy so pure, so unguarded, that it took Zara's breath away. He pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet in an exuberant embrace that made her laugh with surprise and delight. We're probably crazy, he agreed when he set her down. But I don't care. I spent too much of my life being cautious, calculating risks, playing it safe. Not with this. Not with you. They sealed this declaration with a kiss beside the rushing stream, surrounded by ancient trees and dappled sunlight. It felt like a beginning, a promise, a leap of faith that neither had expected to take but both embraced wholeheartedly. The rest of the day passed in a happy blur of simple pleasures. More walks in the woods, a picnic lunch on a sunny rock overlooking the valley, quiet reading by the fire when the afternoon turned cool. By unspoken agreement, they kept their phones turned off, the outside world and its demands held firmly at bay. As evening approached, they cooked together again, moving around the small kitchen in perfect harmony. The easy domesticity of these moments struck Zara as particularly precious, she who had always prioritized career over personal connections, finding such unexpected joy in these simple shared tasks. After dinner, they sat on the cabin's small porch, wrapped in blankets against the evening chill, watching as stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky. Elijah pointed out constellations, his arm around Zara's shoulders keeping her warm. "My mother taught me the stars," he told her. "She loved astronomy. Said it gave her perspective, knowing we're just tiny specks in an enormous universe." "She sounds like a wise woman," Zara said. "She was," Elijah agreed, a note of sadness in his voice. "She would have loved you." The simple statement, offered so naturally, made Zara's heart swell. She turned to look at him, finding his eyes already on her, warm with an emotion neither of them had yet put into words but both could feel growing between them. "Elijah," she began, suddenly needing to express what was in her heart, "I know it's only been a few days but I—" A sharp, electronic chime cut through the peaceful night, making them both jump. It took Zara a moment to recognize it as a phone ringtone, Elijah's, coming from inside the cabin where they'd left their devices. "Ignore it," Elijah said, clearly reluctant to break the spell of their seclusion. But the phone continued to ring, stopping only to start again immediately. Someone was desperately trying to reach him. With a sigh, Elijah stood. "I should at least check who it is. If it's an emergency." Zara nodded, understanding but disappointed as he went inside. The moment had been broken, reality intruding on their private world. A few minutes later, Elijah returned to the porch, his face grim, his phone clutched in his hand. "What is it?" Zara asked, immediately concerned. "What's happened?" "It's Thomas," Elijah said, his voice tight. "There's been a development. The person who sent those photos to the gossip blog has sent more. And they're threatening to release them unless—" "Unless what?" Zara prompted when he hesitated. Elijah met her eyes, his expression troubled. "Unless I resign as CEO of Williams Tech." The drive back to the city was tense, the peaceful bubble of their weekend retreat shattered by Thomas's call. Elijah gripped the steering wheel tightly, his jaw set in a hard line as he navigated the winding country roads in the gathering darkness. "Tell me exactly what Thomas said again," Zara asked, trying to make sense of this new threat. Elijah sighed. The blog received another email from the same anonymous source who sent the original photos. This one contained more images of us, at the jazz club, at the diner afterward, along with a message saying there's more to come unless I publicly step down as CEO by Monday morning. "But why?" Zara shook her head in confusion. "The photos they already published didn't do any real damage. The board accepted our relationship. What's the point of releasing more?" "That's what doesn't make sense," Elijah agreed. "If someone wanted to hurt the company or force me out, they'd need something more damaging than pictures of us on a date." "Unless they have something more damaging that we don't know about," Zara suggested, a cold feeling settling in her stomach. Elijah glanced at her briefly before returning his eyes to the road. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But someone's clearly been following us, taking pictures without our knowledge. What if they've recorded conversations? What if they've doctored images to make them appear compromising?" The idea hung between them, unsettling and all too plausible in an age where technology made such deceptions increasingly easy. "We need to figure out who's behind this," Elijah said, his voice hardening with resolve. "This isn't just about embarrassing photos anymore. This is blackmail. But who would have the motive? And the resources to follow us, to time this so precisely?" Elijah was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "It could be a competitor trying to destabilize Williams Tech. Our new quantum computing project is set to be announced next quarter. It could revolutionize the industry. There are several companies that would benefit if that launch were delayed or disrupted." "That seems like a lot of effort just to slow down a product launch," Zara pointed out. "And why target our relationship specifically? Why not leak details about the project itself?" "You're right," Elijah conceded. "This feels more personal. Like someone wants to hurt me, not just the company." They fell silent again, each lost in thought as the miles passed and the city lights appeared on the horizon, a glowing dome against the night sky. "What are we going to do?" Zara asked finally as they approached the outskirts of the city. "I'm not resigning," Elijah said firmly. "I won't be blackmailed. And I'm not going to let whoever this is control our lives or hurt the company I've built. I agree, Zara said, reaching across to squeeze his hand where it rested on the gearshift. But we need a plan. Thomas has already called in security experts to trace the emails. And I want to hire private investigators to find out who's been following us. Zara nodded, relieved that Elijah was taking concrete action. What can I do to help? Just stay close, he said, his voice softening as he glanced at her. Whoever this is, they're using our relationship as leverage. We need to present a united front. Always, Zara promised. It was nearly midnight when they reached Elijah's penthouse in Manhattan. Unlike the cabin, this space was exactly what one would expect from a billionaire CEO. Sleek, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. But despite its obvious luxury, it felt somehow impersonal to Zara, more like a high-end hotel suite than a home. I know it's not as warm as the cabin, Elijah said, noting her expression as he set down their bags. I don't spend much time here, to be honest. It's more of a convenient location than a home. It's beautiful, Zara assured him. Just different. Elijah's phone rang again, Thomas calling for an update. While he took the call in his home office, Zara wandered the large open-plan living area, taking in the minimalist furnishings, the abstract art on the walls, the gleaming surfaces that showed no signs of daily life. It was the residence of someone who lived primarily in their work, not in their personal space. The only area that showed any real personality was a built-in bookcase that occupied an entire wall. Unlike the rest of the apartment's coordinated aesthetic, the shelves were crammed with books of all sizes and ages, some new, some clearly well-worn, some that appeared to be rare collectibles. Interspersed among them were framed photos and small mementos, a baseball signed by a famous player, a small model of what looked like Elijah's first tech prototype, a few childhood drawings preserved under glass. Zara was examining a photo of a young Elijah with a smiling woman who had to be his mother when he returned from his call. Any news? She asked, turning to face him. Elijah shook his head, looking tired. Nothing concrete yet. The security team is working on tracing the emails, but whoever sent them was careful. Used anonymous servers, bounced the signal around. He moved to stand beside her, his eyes falling on the photo she'd been looking at. That was taken the summer before I started college, he said softly. Mom had just been diagnosed with the heart condition that eventually killed her, but we didn't know how serious it was yet. We were still hopeful. Zara leaned into him, offering silent support. She looks so proud of you. She was, Elijah said, his voice thick with emotion. Even before any success, any money. She believed in me from the start. The vulnerability in his voice, the way he allowed her to see his pain, these were gifts Zara didn't take lightly. She turned in his arms, wrapping her own around his waist, wishing she could shield him from whatever threat now loomed over them. We'll figure this out, she promised. Together. Elijah held her tightly, drawing strength from her presence. I won't let them hurt you, he murmured into her hair. Whatever they're planning, whatever they think they have on us, I'll protect you. And I'll protect you, Zara replied, meaning it with every fiber of her being. Despite the turmoil of the evening, they slept deeply that night, exhausted by the emotional roller coaster of the past few days. Zara woke to sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee brewing. She found Elijah in the kitchen, already dressed in casual weekend clothes. Jeans and a simple gray sweater that somehow made him look more handsome than any of his expensive suits. Good morning, he greeted her, offering a steaming mug. Sleep okay? Better than I expected, given everything, Zara admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. You? Same, he said, but she noticed the tension around his eyes, the slight furrow between his brows that suggested he'd been awake and thinking for some time. What's the plan for today? She asked, sensing he'd already been formulating one. Thomas is coming over in an hour with the head of security. They want to brief us on what they've found so far and discuss next steps. Zara nodded, appreciating being included in these discussions rather than being shielded from them. I should get dressed then. She showered quickly and borrowed a t-shirt from Elijah, knotting it at the waist to make it fit better. They'd left the cabin in such a hurry that she hadn't packed enough clothes for an extended stay in the city. Thomas arrived precisely on time, accompanied by a stern-looking woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes whom he introduced as Diane Vasquez, head of corporate security. Let's get straight to business, Thomas said once they were all seated in Elijah's spacious living room. The situation is evolving rapidly. Diane opened her laptop and turned it to face them. We've been analyzing the emails sent to the blog. The person behind this is sophisticated, They used multiple proxies and anonymous email services. But they made one mistake. She pointed to a line of code on her screen. This metadata suggests the first email was sent from within the Williams Tech building. Elijah's face darkened. An inside job? Someone from the company is doing this. It appears so, Diane confirmed. We're narrowing down the possibilities, checking who was in the building at the time the email was sent. But it was during regular business hours, so that's still hundreds of people. What about the second email? Zara asked. The one with the blackmail threat? Sent from a public Wi-Fi at a coffee shop downtown, Diane said. No useful metadata there. But the timing is interesting. It was sent just after the board meeting where you two announced your relationship. So whoever it is knew about the meeting, Thomas mused. That narrows it down somewhat. What about motive? Elijah asked, his mind racing. Who inside Williams Tech would benefit from forcing me out as CEO? The room fell silent as they all considered the question. There's Richard Dalton, Thomas suggested finally, referring to the board chairman. He's never hidden the fact that he thinks the company needs more traditional leadership. Someone with an MBA instead of a tech background. But blackmail? Elijah shook his head. That's not Richard's style. He's conservative, not criminal. What about Gregory Vance? Diane suggested. Head of R&D? You denied his budget increase last quarter, and he wasn't happy about it. Greg is brilliant but temperamental, Elijah acknowledged. Still, this seems extreme even for him. Zara had been quiet, thinking. What if it's not about replacing you with someone specific? She said suddenly. What if it's about damaging your reputation and the company's stock value? All eyes turned to her. Think about it, she continued. If you resign under a cloud of scandal, the stock will take a hit. Someone with advanced knowledge of your resignation could make a fortune shorting Williams Tech shares. Thomas whistled low. That's disturbingly plausible. And much harder to trace than a direct power play. We need to check unusual trading patterns in company stock, Elijah said, his mind shifting to action mode. And we need a strategy for tomorrow. The deadline is 9 a.m. We could go to the police, Thomas suggested. This is blackmail after all. And risk having everything become even more public? Elijah shook his head. The board barely accepted our relationship as it is. If this escalates into a criminal investigation with more publicity. He didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone understood the delicate position they were in. What if you appear to give them what they want? Zara suggested. Announce your resignation, let the stock dip, and catch whoever tries to profit from it. Elijah considered this. It could work, but it's risky. If the board accepts my resignation before we identify the blackmailer, we could take a different approach, Diane interjected. We turn the tables. Release a statement preemptively addressing any further photos, frame it as harassment of a legitimate relationship, express concern about corporate espionage given your upcoming quantum computing announcement. Control the narrative, Zara nodded, professional instincts kicking in. I like it. We acknowledge that someone is trying to damage Elijah and the company, we express concern about potential corporate espionage, and we make it clear that we won't be intimidated. It could work, Thomas agreed. But we'd need to be prepared for whatever photos they might release. Are there any compromising situations they could have captured? Elijah and Zara exchanged glances, both mentally reviewing their time together. Nothing inappropriate, Elijah said firmly. Just two consenting adults in a relationship. Then I think Diane's approach is our best option, Thomas decided. We draft a statement today, release it first thing tomorrow morning before their deadline. Make it clear that we're aware of the blackmail attempt and are treating it as a potential crime. The rest of the morning was spent crafting the statement, with Zara's marketing expertise proving invaluable in finding the right tone, firm but not defensive, transparent without being revealing. By lunchtime they had a draft they were all satisfied with. As Thomas and Diane prepared to leave, Elijah pulled his friend aside. There's something else I want to do, he said quietly. Something not in the official strategy. Thomas raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I want to set a trap, Elijah explained. Send out an internal memo to a select group of executives, anyone who might have motive, with slightly different information in each version. See which details leak. A canary trap, Thomas nodded, impressed. Clever. What information were you thinking of using? Something about my plans for the quantum computing announcement? I'll say I'm considering delaying it due to personal circumstances. The exact date will be different in each memo. That could work, Thomas agreed. Let me know which executives you want on the list. I'll help coordinate. After Thomas and Diane left, Elijah found Zara sitting on his balcony, gazing out at the city spread below them. The morning's tension had taken its toll. She looked tired, her usual confident posture slightly diminished. He sat beside her, taking her hand. "Are you okay?" "Just processing," she said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's a lot, you know? A week ago my biggest worry was the Johnson presentation. Now I'm involved in corporate blackmail schemes and setting traps for mysterious enemies." "I'm so sorry you've been dragged into this," Elijah said, guilt washing over him. "If you want to step back, create some distance until this blows over." "Don't you dare," Zara interrupted, her eyes flashing with sudden fire. "Don't you dare suggest I leave you to face this alone." The vehemence in her voice took him by surprise. "I just meant." "I know what you meant," she said, softer now. "You're trying to protect me. But that's not how this works, Elijah. We're in this together, remember? Whatever happens, whatever they throw at us, we face it together." Elijah felt something shift inside him. A warmth, a certainty, a knowledge that had been growing since that first moment in the elevator but only now crystallized into complete clarity. "I love you," he said simply, the words falling from his lips as naturally as breathing. Zara's eyes widened, her lips parting in surprise. For a moment he worried he'd moved too fast, said too much. But then her face softened, broke into a smile that illuminated her entire being. "I love you too," she whispered, and the truth of it rang in every syllable. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might disappear if he let go. Whatever threat they faced, whatever storm was coming, he knew with absolute certainty that they would weather it together. The rest of the day passed in a strange mixture of tension and tenderness. They worked on the canary trap memos, carefully crafting different versions for the 7 executives they'd identified as potential suspects. They reviewed the statement again, making final adjustments. They ordered takeout and ate it sitting on the floor of Elijah's living room, surrounded by papers and laptops. And through it all, there was a new awareness between them, a deeper connection forged by those 3 words and the certainty behind them. Occasional touches lingered longer, glances held more meaning, smiles carried more warmth. As night fell, they retreated to Elijah's bedroom, finding solace in each other's arms, creating a bubble of intimacy that temporarily kept the outside world at bay. In those quiet moments, with the city lights twinkling beyond the windows and Zara's heartbeat steady beneath his cheek, Elijah allowed himself to hope that everything would work out, that they would identify the blackmailer, neutralize the threat, and find their way forward together. But as he drifted towards sleep, a nagging worry remained. Whoever was behind this had gone to extraordinary lengths to target him specifically. And people who went to such lengths rarely gave up easily. The storm, he feared, was just beginning. Sunday morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through the windows as Zara and Elijah prepared for the day ahead. The statement was ready to be released, the canary trap memos drafted and scheduled to be sent at 8 a.m., an hour before the blackmailer's deadline. "Are we missing anything?" Zara asked as they ate a quick breakfast of toast and coffee. Elijah ran through their plans once more. "Statement goes out at 8:30. That gives us time to see if any of the canary trap details leak immediately. We've alerted security to monitor all communications from the suspect executives. Thomas is standing by to track stock movements the moment the markets open." "And us?" Zara asked. "What do we do?" "We wait," Elijah said, not entirely happy about it. "Here where we're safe. At least until we see how they respond to our statement." Zara nodded, understanding the necessity even though the idea of hiding out in the penthouse grated against her natural instinct to face challenges head-on. At precisely 8 a.m., Elijah sent the canary trap memos from his secure home workstation. Now it was a waiting game, watching to see which version of the information might appear in a leaked message or blackmail attempt. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. Zara paced the length of the living room, unable to sit still. Elijah kept refreshing his email, waiting for any sign of a reaction. At 8:25, 5 minutes before their statement was set to be released, Elijah's phone rang. It was Thomas. "We've got something," his friend said without preamble. One of the canary trap details just appeared in a text message sent from Victor Harlow's phone. "Victor?" Elijah repeated, surprised. Victor was the company's CFO, a quiet, efficient man who had been with Williams Tech almost from the beginning. "Are you sure?" The message mentioned the exact date from his version of the memo, October 15th for the quantum computing announcement delay. No other version had that date. What was the context? Who did he text? That's the strange part, Thomas said. It was sent to an unlisted number and the full message was cryptic. Delay confirmed for the 15th. Proceed as discussed. We're trying to trace the number now. Elijah's mind raced. Victor Harlow had access to the company's financial information, control over stock transactions, knowledge of all major announcements that could affect share prices. If someone was planning to profit from manipulating Williams Tech stock, the CFO would be the perfect accomplice, or mastermind. Hold off on releasing the statement, Elijah decided. I want to confront Victor directly. Elijah, that's risky, Thomas cautioned. If he is behind this, who knows what he might do if cornered. I need to see his face when I accuse him, Elijah insisted. I've worked with Victor for 10 years. I need to understand why. After a moment's hesitation, Thomas agreed. I'll have security ready. Where do you want to meet him? My office. In 1 hour. Tell him I need to discuss the quarterly financials before the board review tomorrow. What about Zara? Thomas asked. It might be safer if she stays here. Elijah looked at Zara, who was watching him intently, having heard enough of the conversation to understand the gist. She comes with me, he said firmly. We face this together. After hanging up, he explained everything to Zara. Victor Harlow, she repeated thoughtfully. The quiet man with the wire-rimmed glasses? He always seems so harmless. That's what makes this so hard to believe, Elijah admitted. He's been with me since the early days. He helped build Williams Tech. Why would he turn on me now? Money is a powerful motivator, Zara said. And people often feel entitled to more than they have, especially when they've helped create something successful. They rode to the Williams Tech building in tense silence, both lost in thought. The Sunday morning streets were quiet, most of the city still asleep or lingering over weekend brunches. The building was nearly empty when they arrived, just a skeleton security staff and a few dedicated employees catching up on work. Elijah and Zara took the elevator to the executive floor. A different elevator than the one they'd been trapped in, Zara noted with ironic awareness. Thomas was waiting for them outside Elijah's office, his expression grim. Victor just arrived. Security has been alerted to stand by, but discreetly. We don't want to tip him off. Good, Elijah nodded. Has there been any more communication from the blackmailer? Nothing yet, Thomas said. The deadline is still 30 minutes away. Elijah took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. Let's do this. Victor Harlow was waiting in Elijah's office, a leather portfolio open on his lap, a spreadsheet displayed on his tablet. He looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from professional readiness to confusion when he saw Zara. Elijah, Ms. Bennett, he greeted them, standing. I wasn't expecting a full financial review. Should I call in the department heads? That won't be necessary, Victor, Elijah said, his voice controlled despite the anger and betrayal churning inside him. We're not here to discuss the quarterly financials. Victor frowned, glancing between them. Then what? We know about the blackmail, Victor, Elijah interrupted. We know you're the one who sent the photos to the gossip blog. We know you're trying to force me to resign. All color drained from Victor's face. For a moment, he seemed unable to speak, his mouth opening and closing without producing sound. What are you? That's absurd, he finally stammered. Is it? Elijah stepped closer, his voice hardening. We traced the emails to the Williams Tech building. And 20 minutes ago, you sent a text message containing information that only you could have known. Information from a memo that was specifically crafted to identify the leak. Victor's eyes darted to the door as if calculating his chances of escape. Security is outside, Thomas said softly, almost apologetically. There's nowhere to go, Victor. The CFO's shoulders slumped, the fight visibly draining out of him. He sank back into his chair, removing his glasses to rub tiredly at his eyes. Why, Victor? Elijah asked, the question that had been burning inside him. After all these years, all we've built together, why betray me like this? When Victor looked up, his expression had changed from fear to something harder, more resentful. Because you've forgotten what we built together, Elijah. It's all and my company with you now. Your face on the magazines, your name in the headlines. Do you know what they call me? The invisible man of Williams Tech. 10 years of my life, my best ideas, my financial strategies that kept this company afloat in the early days, and what do I have to show for it? The bitterness in his voice was startling. Elijah had never suspected such resentment lurking beneath Victor's calm exterior. You're a wealthy man, Victor, he pointed out. Your stock options alone are worth millions. Millions? Victor repeated with a harsh laugh. While you're worth billions. And it's not just about the money. It's about recognition, respect, a legacy. So you decided to destroy what we built? Elijah asked, genuinely trying to understand. How does that create a legacy? Victor's eyes hardened. I wasn't trying to destroy the company. Just remove you from the equation. With you gone, the board would need a steady hand at the helm. Someone who knows the company inside and out. Someone reliable, trustworthy. You, Zara said, speaking for the first time. You thought they'd make you CEO. Victor nodded, his gaze shifting to her. It was the logical choice. And then I saw you two together, saw an opportunity. The company has strict policies about relationships between executives and their reports. I knew the board would be concerned about potential liability, about the appearance of impropriety. So you followed us, Elijah said, the pieces falling into place. You took those photos, sent them to the blog. I expected the board to force you out immediately, Victor admitted. When they didn't, I had to escalate. The ultimatum was regrettable but necessary. Necessary? Elijah repeated, his voice rising. You betrayed my trust. You invaded our privacy. You tried to destroy my reputation and Zara's career. For what? A corner office and a bigger title? Victor flinched at the anger in Elijah's voice but didn't back down. You wouldn't understand. You've never been in the shadow. Always the genius, the visionary, while people like me do the actual work of running the company. Thomas, who had been quiet during this exchange, finally spoke up. What were you planning to do with the other photos, Victor? Release them regardless of whether Elijah resigned. If necessary, Victor admitted. I have more, various angles from the jazz club, the walk to her apartment. Nothing truly scandalous, but enough to keep the story in the news cycle, to create the impression of ongoing impropriety. The calculated coldness of it stunned Elijah. This man, whom he trusted with his company's finances, with sensitive information, with his very livelihood, had been systematically working to undermine him. What happens now? Victor asked, looking suddenly tired. Police? Public humiliation? Elijah exchanged glances with Zara and Thomas. This was the moment of decision. They could press charges for blackmail, make an example of Victor, ensure he never worked in the industry again. Or they could handle it quietly, avoid the additional publicity and scrutiny that a criminal case would bring. You'll resign, Elijah said finally. Effective immediately. Cite personal reasons, health concerns, whatever you like. You'll sign a non-disclosure agreement about all of this. You'll transfer any remaining company stock options back to the corporate treasury. And you'll hand over all photos and communications related to your blackmail attempt. Victor looked surprised, clearly having expected worse. That's generous. It's not generosity, Elijah corrected him. It's pragmatism. A public scandal hurts everyone, the company, our employees, our shareholders. And despite everything, I haven't forgotten your contributions to Williams Tech over the years. What about my severance package? My retirement benefits? Elijah's expression hardened. You forfeited those the moment you decided to blackmail me. Be grateful you're not facing criminal charges. Victor nodded slowly, accepting the terms. Thomas stepped forward with a tablet. The resignation letter and NDA are already drafted. Legal prepared them as a contingency. As Victor signed the documents with a shaking hand, Zara moved to stand beside Elijah, her presence steady and supportive. There was sadness in his eyes, the end of a long-time professional relationship, the shattering of trust built over years. But there was also resolution, a weight lifting as the threat was neutralized. When everything was signed, Thomas called in security to escort Victor from the building. The former CFO stood, gathering his personal items with as much dignity as he could muster. At the door he paused, looking back at Elijah. For what it's worth, I am sorry it came to this. So am I, Victor, Elijah replied quietly. So am I. After he was gone, the three of them sat in stunned silence for a moment, processing what had just happened. I should call the board, Elijah said finally. Let them know about Victor's resignation before rumors start. And I'll have IT secure his accounts, change all his access credentials, Thomas added. Standard exit protocol. What about the statement we prepared? Zara asked. Do we still release it? Elijah considered this. A modified version. We announce Victor's resignation for personal reasons, express gratitude for his years of service, and name an interim CFO. No mention of blackmail or photos. As Thomas left to implement these actions, Zara moved to Elijah's side, taking his hand. Are you okay? He exhaled slowly. I will be. It's just hard to process. Victor was there from the early days. He helped build this company. To discover he resented me all along, that he was willing to go to such lengths. People are complicated, Zara said gently. And recognition is a powerful need. Some people can work in the background their whole lives and be content knowing they contributed. Others need the spotlight. Elijah nodded, grateful for her insight and her steady presence. Thank you for being here. For facing this with me. Always, she promised, squeezing his hand. As they stood there in the quiet of his office, the immediate threat neutralized but the emotional aftermath still settling around them, Elijah realized something important. The crisis had tested them. Their relationship, their commitment to each other, their willingness to face challenges together. And they had emerged stronger, more certain, more united. Whatever the future held, they would face it side by side. The shy billionaire and the brilliant marketing director, brought together by a chance encounter in a stalled elevator, bound by something that had grown quickly but rooted deeply. It wasn't the ending either of them had expected. It was, in many ways, just the beginning. 3 months later, Zara stood in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom, smoothing down the front of her emerald green dress. Tonight was the Williams Tech Holiday Gala, the company's biggest social event of the year, and her first official public appearance as Elijah's partner. So much had changed since that fateful day in the elevator. After Victor's resignation and the subsequent reorganization, with Zara now reporting to Thomas rather than directly to Elijah, the initial scandal had gradually faded from the tech world's gossip mill. New controversies, new products, new power couples had captured the industry's attention, allowing Elijah and Zara to strengthen their relationship away from the harsh spotlight. Not that it had been entirely smooth sailing. There had been whispers, of course, sidelong glances in the hallways, the occasional pointed question from a board member about whether their personal relationship was affecting business decisions. But they had weathered it all with professionalism and grace, proving through their work and their conduct that they could separate their private and professional lives. The quantum computing project had launched on schedule the previous month, to rave reviews and excitement from the tech community. Williams Tech stock was at an all-time high. Zara's marketing department had broken all previous records for campaign effectiveness. And perhaps most importantly, the board had finally, officially endorsed their relationship after the successful quarterly review. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, knowing who it would be. Elijah stepped into the room, resplendent in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. He stopped short when he saw her, his eyes widening with appreciation. "You look absolutely stunning," he said, his voice warm with admiration. Zara smiled, taking in his appearance with equal appreciation. "You clean up pretty well yourself, Mr. Williams." He crossed the room to her, sliding his arms around her waist. "Are you ready for this? Our first official public event together." "I think so," Zara nodded, a touch of nervousness in her voice despite her confident exterior. "It feels like a big step." "It is," Elijah acknowledged. "But we've faced bigger challenges already, haven't we?" That was certainly true. After the blackmail incident, they had agreed to take things slowly, to give their relationship time to develop naturally despite its unconventional beginning. Zara had kept her own apartment, though she spent most nights at Elijah's penthouse or at the cabin upstate, which had become their favorite weekend retreat. At work, they maintained strict professionalism, limiting personal interactions to lunch dates outside the office and the occasional coffee in one of the building's public spaces. It wasn't always easy, especially on days when Elijah found himself distracted by the sound of Zara's voice in a meeting or the flash of her smile across a conference room. But the boundaries they'd established had served them well, earning them respect from colleagues who had initially been skeptical. "I have something for you," Elijah said now, reaching into his pocket. "An early Christmas gift." He handed her a small velvet box. Zara's heart skipped a beat. It was too soon for a ring, wasn't it? They had talked about the future, about building a life together, but hadn't yet discussed marriage specifically. When she opened the box, she found not a ring but a delicate gold pendant in the shape of an elevator button. She laughed, delighted by the thoughtfulness and humor of the gift. "I love it," she said, turning so he could fasten it around her neck. "Our own private joke. A reminder of where we started," Elijah said, his fingers warm against her skin as he secured the clasp. "And how sometimes what seems like bad luck turns out to be the best thing that could happen." Zara turned back to face him, reaching up to straighten his bow tie. "Speaking of best things, have you made a decision about Thomas's offer?" Thomas had recently approached Elijah with a proposal to restructure the company leadership. He suggested that Elijah step back from day-to-day operations to focus on research and development, his true passion, while Thomas would take over as operational CEO. It was a bold idea, one that would allow Elijah more freedom and creative time while maintaining his vision for the company. "I'm leaning toward accepting," Elijah admitted. "But I wanted to talk to you about it first. It would mean big changes, less travel, more time in the lab, probably a lower public profile." "All of which sound wonderful to me," Zara smiled. "But what matters is how you feel about it. Is this what you want?" Elijah took her hands in his. "What I want is to create things that matter, to solve problems, to build the future. And to do it with you by my side. The title, the press conferences, the endless meetings with investors, I can let those go without regret." "Then I think you have your answer," Zara said softly. The intercom buzzed, announcing the arrival of their car. It was time to head to the gala, to step into the public eye as a couple for the first time. As they rode down in the elevator, a different one than their fateful meeting place, Elijah squeezed Zara's hand. "Nervous?" "A little," she admitted. "Everyone will be watching us, analyzing every interaction." "Let them watch," Elijah said with surprising confidence for a man who had once been too shy to speak to her in meetings. "All they'll see is two people who love each other and who happen to work for the same company." The ballroom was already crowded when they arrived, hundreds of employees, business partners, and industry figures mingling under crystal chandeliers. A momentary hush fell as they entered, followed by a wave of whispers as people noticed their clasped hands and the easy intimacy between them. "Showtime," Zara murmured, plastering on her professional smile. To her surprise, Elijah didn't tense up or retreat into his usual reserved public persona. Instead, he kept her hand firmly in his as they moved through the crowd, greeting people warmly, introducing Zara not as "our marketing director," but simply as "my partner, Zara." Thomas found them by the champagne fountain, giving Elijah a knowing look. "So, you decided to make it official tonight. Bold move." "Time to stop hiding," Elijah said simply. "We have nothing to be ashamed of." "Well, you look good together," Thomas said with genuine warmth. "And if the board members' expressions are anything to go by, they're coming around to the idea faster than expected." As the evening progressed, Zara realized that the stares and whispers were evolving into smiles and congratulations. Colleagues who had been distant in recent months approached to express genuine good wishes. Even Richard Dalton, the stern board chairman who had initially been most concerned about their relationship, stopped by to grudgingly admit that they seemed to be handling things appropriately. "I think we're winning them over," Zara whispered to Elijah as they swayed gently on the dance floor later in the evening. "I told you they would come around," he said, his eyes never leaving her face. "Just like I came around to the idea of dancing in public." She laughed, remembering his initial reluctance when she'd pulled him toward the dance floor. "And here I thought all billionaires took ballroom dancing lessons. Only the ones with very insistent mothers," Elijah chuckled. "Though I'm grateful for those lessons now." As they moved together in perfect harmony, Zara took in the room around them, the glittering lights, the elegant decorations, the faces of people who had become not just colleagues but a kind of extended family over the past months. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, from that stuck elevator to this moment of public acknowledgement and acceptance. "What are you thinking?" Elijah asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "I'm thinking about how sometimes life's most important journeys happen when we're standing still," she said. "If that elevator hadn't broken down, I would have found another way to talk to you," Elijah finished for her. "Eventually. It might have taken longer, been less dramatic, but I think we would have found our way to each other somehow." "You really believe that?" Zara asked, touched by his certainty. "I do," he nodded. "Some connections are inevitable. They're written in the stars or in the code of the universe, or whatever metaphor you prefer. All I know is that the moment I saw you in that elevator, something inside me recognized you as important. Essential. Mine." The simple declaration, spoken so matter-of-factly in the middle of a crowded ballroom, brought tears to Zara's eyes. "I felt it too," she admitted. "Even though I thought you didn't like me." "The furthest thing from the truth," Elijah laughed softly. "I was just a shy billionaire with a crush on the brilliant woman who intimidated me more than any board meeting ever could. And I was just a marketing director who couldn't figure out why her boss clammed up every time she entered a room," Zara smiled back. The music changed to a faster tempo, but they continued their slow dance, lost in their own world. "I have another proposal for you," Elijah said after a moment, his expression turning more serious. "One that has nothing to do with work." Zara's heart skipped a beat. "Oh. Move in with me," he said simply. Officially. Not just staying over most nights but making it our home. Together. Relief and joy washed over her. That's your proposal? For now, Elijah grinned, catching her meaning. The other kind will come, but I thought we might take this step first. Do things in the right order. Yes, Zara said without hesitation. Yes, I'll move in with you. Though I expect equal closet space and veto power over any tech gadgets in the bedroom. Deal? Elijah laughed, pulling her closer for a quick kiss, heedless of the eyes watching them. As the night wore on and the gala began to wind down, they found themselves on the terrace outside the ballroom, looking out over the city lights. The December air was crisp but not unpleasant, and the sky above was unusually clear for New York, a few bright stars visible despite the urban glow. I've been thinking about what happens next, Elijah said, his arm warm around Zara's shoulders. Not just with us but with everything. The company, the future. And what have you decided? She asked, leaning into his warmth. That I want to build something that lasts. Something meaningful. He looked down at her, his eyes soft with emotion. Not just technology but a life. A legacy that's about more than stock prices or product launches. That sounds like a worthy goal, Zara smiled. And one I'd very much like to be part of. You already are, Elijah assured her. You're central to all of it, to everything I want to create, everything I hope to become. Zara turned to face him fully, her hands coming to rest on his chest. Who would have thought that getting stuck in an elevator could lead to all this? Not me, Elijah admitted with a smile. Though I'm starting to think it was the luckiest malfunction in the history of elevators. Definitely top 5, Zara teased, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms with the city spread out before them and the stars shining above, both knew that this was just one moment in what promised to be a lifetime of moments together. There would be challenges ahead, of course. Navigating their professional and personal relationship, dealing with continued public interest in their story, building a shared life while maintaining their individual passions and goals. But after everything they'd already faced and overcome, those challenges seemed like opportunities rather than obstacles. Opportunities to grow together, to strengthen their bond, to build something extraordinary. We should probably go back inside, Zara said eventually, though she made no move to leave the comfort of Elijah's embrace. People will wonder where we've disappeared to. Let them wonder, Elijah murmured against her hair. I'm in no hurry to share you with anyone else tonight. A gentle cough from the doorway interrupted their moment. Thomas stood there, an apologetic expression on his face. Sorry to intrude, but you're needed for the closing toast, Elijah. Traditional CEO duty. Elijah sighed but nodded. Duty calls. One more thing, Thomas added, a hint of excitement in his voice despite his professional demeanor. The Johnson team just called. They want to double their contract for next year. Said the campaign exceeded all expectations. Zara's eyes widened. Double? That's incredible. And entirely due to your team's work, Elijah said, pride evident in his voice. Looks like we have 2 things to celebrate tonight. They followed Thomas back inside, where the remaining guests had gathered around the main stage for the traditional year-end toast. As Elijah took his place at the microphone, his eyes sought and found Zara in the crowd. She smiled encouragingly, feeling a surge of pride as she watched him address the room with confidence and warmth that had once been hidden behind his shy exterior. Before we close out this wonderful evening, Elijah said after thanking everyone for their contributions to the company's success, I want to share some news about the future of Williams Tech. A hush fell over the room. This was unexpected. Company announcements weren't typically part of the holiday gala. After much consideration, I've decided to restructure our leadership team in the coming year, Elijah continued. Thomas Peterson will be taking on the role of operational CEO, overseeing the day-to-day management of the company. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Thomas, standing to the side of the stage, nodded in acknowledgement as several heads turned his way. This will allow me to focus on what I've always loved most: innovation, research, and developing the technologies that will shape our future. I'll be assuming the role of Executive Chairman and Chief Innovation Officer. Zara watched the reactions around her, surprise, curiosity, and then gradual understanding and approval as people processed the logic of the change. Elijah had always been the visionary, the creative force behind Williams Tech's most groundbreaking products. This new structure would play to his strengths while bringing Thomas's operational expertise to the forefront. Change can be scary, Elijah acknowledged, his gaze finding Zara again. But sometimes, the most unexpected changes turn out to be the best ones. I've learned that lesson personally this year. A few knowing chuckles spread through the crowd, and Zara felt herself blushing slightly at the oblique reference to their relationship. So please raise your glasses, Elijah concluded, lifting his champagne flute. To Williams Tech, to the incredible team that makes everything possible, and to embracing the unexpected turns that life throws our way. To Williams Tech, the crowd echoed, glasses raised high. As Elijah stepped down from the stage, making his way through well-wishers and congratulations, Zara felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Richard Dalton, the board chairman, standing beside her. "Ms. Bennett," he greeted her formally, though his expression was less stern than usual. "I wanted to offer my congratulations." "On the Johnson contract?" Zara asked, slightly confused by his approach. "On that, yes," Dalton nodded. "But also on everything else." He gestured vaguely in Elijah's direction. "I had my doubts, as I'm sure you know. About the propriety, the potential complications." "I remember," Zara said carefully, unsure where this conversation was heading. "I was wrong," Dalton admitted, surprising her. "I've known Elijah for almost a decade. Never seen him as focused, as balanced as he's been these past few months. You've been good for him. And it seems for the company as well." Before Zara could respond to this unexpected endorsement, Elijah reached them, sliding an arm around her waist. "Richard," he greeted the chairman. "Enjoying the evening?" "Just sharing some observations with Ms. Bennett," Dalton said with a small smile. "About positive developments within the company." "Always good to hear," Elijah replied, exchanging a quick glance with Zara. "Will you be joining the board call tomorrow to discuss the restructuring?" "Wouldn't miss it," Dalton assured him. "Though after your announcement tonight, I suspect it will be a fairly straightforward approval process." After Dalton moved on to mingle with other guests, Zara turned to Elijah. "That was unexpected." He actually apologized in his own Richard Dalton way. "The ultimate stamp of approval," Elijah chuckled. "Though his opinion matters far less to me than yours. What did you think of the announcement?" "I think it's perfect," Zara said honestly. "You in the lab creating amazing things. Thomas handling the business side. It plays to both your strengths." "And what about us?" Elijah asked, his voice softening as he drew her slightly away from the nearby guests. "Do you think we're playing to our strengths?" Zara pretended to consider the question seriously. "Well, your strength is clearly in executive decisions. Asking me to move in was very CEO-like. Direct, efficient, expecting immediate results." "And your strength is in marketing," Elijah replied, playing along. "You've certainly sold me on the concept of a future together." "In that case," Zara said, her tone shifting from teasing to sincere, "I have a new campaign to propose. Project Forever. Long-term commitment, lifetime investment, with potentially extraordinary returns." Elijah's eyes widened slightly as he caught her meaning. "That sounds like a campaign worth pursuing," he said softly. "Though it might require a significant initial investment." "The best things usually do," Zara smiled. The gala continued around them, music playing, people laughing and celebrating, the year drawing to a close and a new one waiting just around the corner. But for Elijah and Zara, standing in their own private bubble amidst the crowd, it felt like something much bigger was beginning. Not just a new chapter in their relationship, but a whole new story, one they would write together day by day, moment by moment. A story that had started in the most unexpected way, with a shy billionaire and a confident marketing director trapped in an elevator, forced to truly see each other for the first time. "I love you," Elijah whispered, the words still new enough to send a thrill through both of them. "I love you too," Zara replied, meaning it more deeply than she'd ever thought possible. And in that moment, surrounded by the trappings of success and achievement, the glamorous party, the business triumphs, the professional accolades, both recognized the simple truth that had emerged from their unexpected journey, that of all the connections they'd made, all the accomplishments they'd achieved, what mattered most was this. Two people who had found each other against the odds, who had chosen each other despite the complications, who had built something genuine and lasting in a world where such connections were all too rare. As midnight approached and the year prepared to turn, they stood together on the threshold of their future, not knowing exactly what it would hold, but certain they would face it side by side. The shy billionaire and the woman who had seen through his reserve to the heart beneath. Two people who had stepped into an elevator as strangers and emerged, hours later, forever changed. Sometimes, they both knew, the most important journeys happen when you're standing still. And sometimes, the most unexpected detours lead you exactly where you need to be.